The mind's invisible architecture. In the quiet theater of your mind, you are both the audience and the star of the show. You experience a stream of thoughts, feelings, and decisions that feel uniquely your own, a product of your conscious will and rational deliberation. But what if this feeling of complete authorship is a subtle illusion? What if much of what you think, feel, and perceive is being shaped by a hidden, invisible architecture, a set of pre-existing patterns and biases that operate silently, automatically, and powerfully just beneath the surface of your awareness? This is the central idea we will be exploring tonight. Beyond the well-known cognitive biases, there exists a whole world of more subtle, more hidden mind traps, cognitive quirks and assumptions that gently but persistently steer our understanding of ourselves, of others, and of reality itself. Over the next 3 hours, our journey will be an archaeological dig into our own minds, carefully brushing away the dust to reveal this invisible architecture. We will not be looking at the grand pillars and archways of our psyche, but at the subtle mortar, the hidden wiring, the almost imperceptible tilts in the foundation that shape everything above. We will begin by exploring the traps of our social self-perception. We will delve into the spotlight effect, the amusing but often anxiety-inducing illusion that our every action and flaw is under the intense scrutiny of a public audience. And we will explore its counterpart, the illusion of transparency, the mistaken belief that our internal states, our feelings and thoughts, are as obvious to others as they are to us, a bias that can lead to profound misunderstandings. We will then turn to the subtle biases that shape our moral and causal understanding of the world. We will confront the Just-World Fallacy, the deep, often unconscious, need to believe that the world is a fair place, a bias that can tragically lead us to blame victims for their own misfortune. We will examine naive realism, the unshakable, intuitive faith that we see the world objectively, as it is, and that those who see it differently must be biased, irrational, or ill-informed. This single bias is a primary engine of so much of our interpersonal and political conflict. We will also explore belief bias, the subtle trap of judging the logical strength of an argument based not on its structure, but on whether its conclusion aligns with what we already believe to be true. Our journey will then take us into the hidden mechanics of our memory and our relationship with our own choices. We will explore effort justification, the tendency to value an outcome more highly simply because we struggled to achieve it, a bias that can lock us into unrewarding paths. We will look at the Zeigarnik Effect, the psychological reason why unfinished tasks and unresolved thoughts tend to haunt our minds, creating a persistent mental chatter. And we will see how choice-supportive bias gently rewrites our history, causing us to remember the choices we made as being better than they actually were, a silent defense mechanism for our ego. We will navigate the subtle twists of our moral decision-making, exploring omission bias, our strange tendency to judge harmful actions as being morally worse than equally harmful inactions. We will explore the traps of our perception of time and temptation, looking at Rosy Retrospection, which paints our past in a deceptively golden light, and Restraint Bias, our dangerous overconfidence in our own ability to resist future temptations. We will even delve into the strange world of Cryptomnesia, the hidden mind trap where our brain serves up a memory but tricks us into believing it is a moment of original creation. Finally, we will look at the subtle biases that influence how we interact with the world of objects, ideas, and other people. We will explore functional fixedness, the mental block that prevents us from seeing novel uses for familiar objects. We will confront system justification, the unconscious and sometimes self-defeating motivation to defend the status quo. We will understand the Semmelweis Reflex, our automatic knee-jerk rejection of new evidence that contradicts our established paradigms. And we will explore strange loops of social psychology like the Ben Franklin effect, which shows that doing a favor for someone can paradoxically make us like them more. The mind fuck of this exploration is the sheer subtlety and pervasiveness of these biases. These are not dramatic failures of logic. They are the quiet, everyday workings of a mind that is designed for efficiency, not for perfect, objective truth. They are the thumbprints left on our perception by an evolutionary history that prized survival and quick decision-making over philosophical accuracy. To see this invisible architecture is to realize that our subjective experience of reality is a profoundly mediated and constructed affair, a story that our brain is telling itself, a story that is shaped by these hidden rules. This journey is not meant to make you distrust your own mind. On the contrary, by understanding these hidden patterns, we can become more mindful, more compassionate, and more free. To know that the spotlight is an illusion can be a balm for social anxiety. To know that our beliefs can blind us to logic can make us more open-minded. To know that the world feels just because our mind craves it to be can make us more compassionate towards the victims of misfortune. This is a path of deep relaxation through self-awareness. As you begin to fall asleep, let go of the idea of your mind as a perfect, rational instrument. Instead, picture it as an ancient, intricate, and beautiful piece of architecture, filled with hidden passageways, strange echoes, and subtle, optical illusions. Appreciate its quirks and its shortcuts not as flaws, but as the very texture of its being. This is the mind you inhabit. And tonight, we will gently and peacefully explore its secret rooms, not to renovate but simply to understand. To know the shape of our own cognitive home is the first step towards resting peacefully within it. The Spotlight Effect. Let us begin our exploration of the mind's hidden traps with a journey into the heart of our social self, to a subtle but powerful bias that generates a great deal of unnecessary anxiety and self-consciousness. We will explore the spotlight effect. This is the common and often powerful feeling that our actions, our appearance, and our every mistake are the focus of intense scrutiny by those around us. It is the feeling of walking into a room and thinking that everyone has noticed your slightly mismatched socks, the feeling of stumbling over a word in a meeting and being convinced that it is the only thing anyone will remember, the feeling that a bad hair day is a public spectacle. The spotlight effect is the mindfuck of egocentric bias, the profound illusion that the spotlight of social attention shines far more brightly on us than it actually does. The psychology mystery is why our brains, which are so good at so many things, are so poor at accurately gauging how much or how little others are actually paying attention to us. Understanding this cognitive distortion, seeing the illusory nature of the spotlight, can be a profound source of social freedom and deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The spotlight effect was named and systematically studied by psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky. In a series of clever experiments, they demonstrated the powerful disconnect between our perception of our own salience and the reality. In one famous study, they had a college student arrive late to a room where a group of other students were working, and the latecomer was asked to wear an embarrassing t-shirt, in this case, one featuring a large picture of the singer Barry Manilow, who was not considered cool by the student demographic at the time. After a few moments, the student was taken out of the room and asked to estimate what percentage of the people in the room had noticed their embarrassing shirt. The student, feeling the intense heat of the imaginary spotlight, typically estimated that around 50% of the people had noticed. But when the researchers asked the other students in the room, they found that the actual number was far lower, closer to 20 or 25%. The students' subjective experience of their own conspicuousness was dramatically inflated. Why does this happen? The effect stems from a powerful cognitive bias known as egocentrism, or what is sometimes called anchoring and adjustment, in a social context. We are, by our very nature, the centers of our own universe. Our own actions, feelings, and internal states are the most immediate and salient pieces of information we have. When we try to imagine how others see us, we anchor our judgment on our own intense, first-person experience. We feel our own embarrassment acutely, and we find it difficult to adjust far enough away from that anchor to accurately simulate the far more distracted and less focused perspective of another person. We fail to appreciate that while we are the main character in our own movie, we are just a background extra, a passing bit player, in the movie of almost everyone else. They are just as busy worrying about their own spotlight, their own internal monologue as we are. This hidden mind trap is a constant feature of our social lives. It is the source of much of our social anxiety. The fear of public speaking is often fueled by the spotlight effect. The belief that every member of the audience is hanging on our every word, ready to notice every slight hesitation or mistake. The self-consciousness we feel when entering a party or a social gathering is often the feeling of this imaginary spotlight turning on, making us feel exposed and judged. We worry about saying the wrong thing, making a clumsy gesture, or having a piece of food stuck in our teeth, believing that such a minor flaw will become a major event in the minds of others. The reality, revealed by psychology, is that most people are simply not paying that much attention. The mystery is why this illusion is so persistent, even when we have been told about it. It seems to be a deep, hardwired feature of our social cognition. From an evolutionary perspective, being highly attuned to our social standing and how we are perceived by our tribe was a crucial survival skill. Being positively evaluated by the group meant access to resources, mates, and safety. Being negatively evaluated could lead to ostracism, which was often a death sentence. Our brains may have evolved a better safe than sorry mechanism for social attention, a system that is biased towards overestimating our social salience to ensure that we are constantly monitoring and managing the impressions we make. In our ancient past, the spotlight was real because the group was small and everyone was paying attention. Our modern brains are still running this ancient, small tribe software in the context of a large, anonymous, and largely indifferent modern world. Understanding the spotlight effect is not just an interesting piece of trivia, it is a powerful therapeutic tool. It can be a direct antidote to social anxiety and self-consciousness. The next time you find yourself feeling embarrassed or anxious in a social situation, convinced that everyone is judging your every move, you can consciously remind yourself of this effect. You can gently say to yourself, "The spotlight is an illusion. I am the only one who feels this intensely. Most people are busy with their own thoughts and are not paying this much attention to me." This simple act of cognitive reframing can be incredibly liberating. It can lower the stakes of social interaction, allowing you to be more present, more authentic, and less self-conscious. It gives you permission to be imperfect. The mind fuck is the humbling realization of our own relative insignificance in the minds of others, and the simultaneous discovery that this insignificance is, in fact, a profound freedom. We spend so much of our mental energy trying to manage an impression in the minds of an audience that is largely not there. To let go of the spotlight is to be freed from the burden of this constant, imaginary performance. As you continue to fall asleep, allow that bright, harsh, imaginary spotlight to soften, to dim, and to finally fade away. Picture yourself in a social setting, and instead of a single intense beam focused on you, see 1,000 small, gentle lights, one emanating from each person, each one focused primarily on themselves. Feel the immense relief, the profound relaxation that comes with stepping out of that imaginary beam of scrutiny. Acknowledge that your own inner world is vast and vivid to you, but largely invisible to others, and their inner worlds are largely invisible to you. Find peace in this mutual, compassionate inattention, resting calmly in the quiet, liberating anonymity of being just one person among many, free to simply be yourself. The illusion of transparency. Having dimmed the imaginary spotlight that we believe shines upon our actions, let us now turn to a related, but distinct, hidden mind trap that operates in the opposite direction. This is the illusion of transparency. It is our deep, persistent, and often mistaken belief that our inner state, our emotions, our thoughts, our intentions, our very soul, is far more obvious to others than it actually is. If the spotlight effect is the belief that our actions are in the spotlight, the illusion of transparency is the belief that our minds are a kind of open book. We feel our own anxiety, our own love, our own deception, our own enthusiasm so intensely that we find it hard to believe that others are not seeing it just as clearly. This is a subtle psychology mystery of egocentric bias, a mind fuck that questions the very connection between our inner world and our outer expression, and it is a primary source of miscommunication and social anxiety. Understanding this illusion can bring a profound sense of relief and a more realistic approach to our social existence, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The illusion of transparency stems from the same root as the spotlight effect. Our own internal experience is our primary anchor, and we fail to adequately adjust for the different perspective of others. We are privy to the full, high-definition, surround sound experience of our own inner life. We feel the frantic beating of our heart when we are nervous, the subtle warmth of affection, the complex train of thought behind a simple statement. We are experts on our own internal data. We then make the intuitive, but often incorrect, assumption that this rich inner data must be leaking out through our expressions, our tone of voice, and our body language far more than it actually is. We forget that other people only have access to our external, often muted and ambiguous behaviors. They cannot hear our inner monologue. They cannot feel our inner turmoil. This was powerfully demonstrated in a series of experiments by the same researchers, Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky, along with Victoria Medvec. In one study, participants were asked to lie about their opinion on a topic while being videotaped. Afterwards, they were asked to estimate how well an outside observer would be able to detect their lies. The liars consistently and significantly overestimated their own transparency. They felt like their deception was written all over their faces, that their inner anxiety about lying must be incredibly obvious. However, when the observers actually watched the tapes, their ability to detect the lies was no better than chance. The liar's internal feeling of transparency was a complete illusion. This has profound implications for our social lives. It is a major source of social anxiety. When giving a speech, we might be convinced that our nervousness is painfully obvious to the entire audience, that they can see our shaking hands, hear the tremble in our voice, and sense our inner panic. The reality is that most of the audience who are not privy to our internal feelings will likely perceive us as being far calmer and more confident than we feel. Our subjective experience of our own anxiety is magnified, and we mistakenly believe that this magnification is public. This illusion can also create profound miscommunications in our relationships. We might assume that our love or appreciation for a partner is obvious through our actions, and we are surprised when they say they feel unappreciated. We have not realized that the deep feeling of love we experience internally does not automatically and transparently broadcast itself to the other person. They only see our outward behaviors, which might be tired or distracted. Similarly, we might be upset about something and give what we believe are clear, obvious signals of our displeasure, only to be frustrated when our partner seems completely oblivious. We assume our inner state is leaking out, when in fact, our outward expression might be far more subtle and ambiguous than we realize. We expect others to be mind readers, because we forget that they are not privy to the rich text of our own consciousness. The mind fuck of the illusion of transparency is the realization that we are far more opaque to others than we feel we are. We are each living in our own private, subjective universe, and the windows between these universes are much smaller and foggier than we intuitively believe. This questions our very sense of shared reality and connection. It highlights the immense difficulty and the profound importance of clear, explicit communication. We cannot rely on others to simply see our intentions or our feelings. We must learn to articulate them. The psychology mystery is why this bias is so robust and persistent. It seems that the sheer, overwhelming intensity of our own first-person experience makes it incredibly difficult to accurately simulate the limited, third-person perspective of an observer. Our own inner world is the ultimate anchor, and we are tethered to it. Even when we are told about this illusion, our gut feeling in the moment is often still one of transparency. This is a testament to the power of our egocentric perspective in shaping our social reality. Understanding this hidden mind trap can be a source of immense relief and practical wisdom. It can soothe our social anxieties by reminding us that our nervousness is probably not as obvious as it feels. It can improve our relationships by encouraging us to be more explicit with our feelings, both positive and negative, rather than assuming they are already known. It can make us more compassionate and less judgmental when we fail to understand others, recognizing that their inner state is likely just as hidden from us as ours is from them. It replaces the anxious assumption of transparency with a more realistic and compassionate understanding of our mutual opacity. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the rich, complex, vibrant world of your own inner state right now. Your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations. Acknowledge this world as your own private, intimate reality. Now, picture a gentle, translucent veil between this inner world and the outside world. Recognize that others cannot see through this veil as clearly as you think they can. Your inner state is your own secret. This is not a cause for loneliness, but for a different kind of peace. Find deep relaxation in this sense of privacy, in the freedom that comes from knowing that you are not as exposed as you feel, and in the gentle reminder to communicate with kindness and clarity, to consciously build the bridges of understanding between your private world and the private worlds of others. Resting peacefully, secure in the quiet, mysterious, and beautifully opaque sanctuary of your own mind. The Just-World Fallacy. Let us now turn our attention from the biases of self-perception to a deep and powerful hidden mind trap that shapes our perception of justice, fairness, and the very moral fabric of the universe. We will explore the Just-World Fallacy, also known as the Just-World Hypothesis. This is the pervasive, often unconscious cognitive bias or belief that the world is a fundamentally just, orderly, and fair place, where people generally get what they deserve and deserve what they get. Good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. This belief, while seemingly optimistic, has a dark and insidious underside. To maintain this comforting illusion in the face of a reality that is often random, chaotic, and profoundly unfair, we are often unconsciously motivated to find reasons to blame the victims of misfortune for their own suffering. The Just-World Fallacy is a profound psychology mystery, a mind fuck that questions the very foundation of our compassion, revealing how a deep-seated need for a predictable and controllable world can lead us into patterns of cruel and irrational judgment. Understanding this trap is a crucial step towards cultivating a more realistic and compassionate worldview, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The concept was first systematically studied by social psychologist Melvin J. Lerner in the 1960s. He was struck by the tendency of observers to derogate and blame innocent victims of suffering. He proposed that we have a fundamental, non-rational need to believe that we live in a world where we can control our own outcomes, a world where our actions have predictable and just consequences. The alternative, the belief that the world is random and that terrible, undeserved things can happen to anyone at any time, including ourselves, for no reason at all, is a source of profound existential anxiety. It is terrifying to think that we are not in control, that our virtue is no shield against tragedy. The Just-World Fallacy is a powerful defense mechanism against this existential terror. By believing that the world is fair, we create a psychological buffer. If people get what they deserve, then we can feel safe as long as we are good people. We can believe that if we work hard, are kind, and follow the rules, we will be protected from misfortune. This belief gives us a sense of control and allows us to invest in long-term goals, trusting that our efforts will be justly rewarded. It is the psychological foundation for the comforting idea that what goes around comes around. But what happens when this comforting belief collides with the undeniable reality of unjust suffering? What happens when we see a good person suffer a terrible accident, a kind family lose their home in a natural disaster, or an innocent individual become a victim of a violent crime? This creates a state of cognitive dissonance. The evidence of unjust suffering directly contradicts our deep-seated need to believe in a just world. To resolve this dissonance, our minds have two choices. We could abandon our belief in a just world and accept the terrifying reality that the world is often unfair and unpredictable. Or we can find a way to reinterpret the evidence to make it fit our belief. This second path is the one that leads to the dark side of the Just-World Fallacy: blaming the victim. If we believe the world is fair and we see someone suffering, our subconscious logic dictates that they must have done something to deserve it. So, we begin an unconscious search for reasons to blame them. The victim of an assault must have been acting provocatively, or shouldn't have been in that neighborhood. The person living in poverty must be lazy, or must have made poor choices. The person who gets a terrible disease must have had an unhealthy lifestyle. By finding a flaw in the victim's character or a mistake in their actions, we can preserve our belief that the world is an orderly and just place. The suffering is no longer random. It is a predictable consequence of the victim's own failings. This act of victim blaming serves a crucial psychological purpose for the observer. It reestablishes their own sense of safety and control. If the victim is to blame for their own suffering, then we can feel safe as long as we don't make the same mistakes. We create a psychological distance between ourselves and the victim, reassuring ourselves that this could never happen to me because I am not like them. It is a cruel but deeply effective strategy for managing our own fear of vulnerability. The mind-fuck of the Just-World Fallacy is the profound and tragic irony that a belief which seems, on the surface, to be moral and optimistic, the belief in a fair world, is a primary psychological engine for some of our most cruel and unempathetic judgments. It questions the very source of our condemnation of others, suggesting that it often comes not from a place of righteous judgment, but from a place of deep, personal fear. The mystery is how this process can operate so automatically and so invisibly within us, leading good, well-intentioned people to engage in the cold calculus of victim blaming without even realizing they are doing it. We see the effects of this hidden mind trap everywhere in our social and political discourse. It fuels the tendency to stigmatize the poor, the sick, and the unfortunate. It can lead to a lack of compassion for the victims of systemic injustice, as we prefer to believe that people's station in life is solely a product of their individual merit and choices. It can make us resistant to social policies aimed at helping the unlucky, because our subconscious belief is that they don't deserve help. So, how can we resist this powerful and pervasive bias? The antidote is the conscious and deliberate cultivation of empathy and critical thinking. When we are confronted with the suffering of another, we must actively resist the immediate, comforting impulse to find a reason why they deserved it. Instead, we can practice perspective taking, actively trying to imagine what it would be like to be in their situation, to feel their pain, to understand the complex web of circumstances that led to their misfortune. This empathetic connection can short-circuit the cold logic of victim blaming. We must also consciously and critically acknowledge the profound role of chance, luck, and systemic factors in shaping people's lives. We can remind ourselves that we do not live in a perfectly just world, that terrible things do happen to good people, and that our own good fortune is often a product of luck and privilege, not just our own virtue. This requires a tolerance for uncertainty and a willingness to sit with the uncomfortable reality of a world we do not fully control. It is the choice to embrace a more complex and compassionate view of reality, even if it is a less comforting one. As you continue to fall asleep, gently hold in your awareness this deep human need for a just world. Acknowledge the comfort and the sense of control that this belief provides. Now, with a sense of compassionate self-awareness, notice the subtle and sometimes dark ways this belief can twist our perceptions, leading us to blame victims for their own pain. Let go of the rigid need for the world to be perfectly fair. Find deep relaxation in the more difficult, but ultimately more compassionate, acceptance of reality in all its messy, unpredictable, and often unjust complexity. Rest peacefully with a quiet commitment to cultivating empathy, to resisting the urge to blame, and to being a source of comfort, not judgment, in a world that is so often in need of it. Naive realism. Let us now explore what is perhaps the most fundamental, most pervasive, and most invisible of all our subtle biases. It is the very lens through which we experience the world, a lens so perfectly fitted that we are completely unaware we are even looking through it. This is the hidden mind trap of naive realism. It is the powerful, unshakable, and almost universal belief that we perceive reality directly, immediately, and objectively, as it is. It is the common-sense feeling that our senses are like clear windows, providing us with an unmediated, unfiltered view of the external world. And from this deep-seated belief flows a crucial and often problematic corollary: the assumption that other rational, reasonable people will see the world in the exact same way. When they don't, we are often led to conclude that they must be biased, irrational, lazy, or ill-intentioned. Naive realism is the bedrock of our subjective certainty, but it is also a primary and powerful engine of interpersonal and intergroup conflict. The mindfuck of this bias is that it is an illusion about the very nature of perception, a mystery that hides in plain sight, making us feel like objective observers when we are all, in fact, active interpreters. The belief in direct, objective perception feels self-evident. When you look at a red apple, you have the powerful sensation that you are simply seeing the redness that is out there, a property of the apple itself. As we have explored in our journeys into perception, however, this is a profound simplification. Your experience of red is a complex construction of your brain, a result of light waves of a certain length interacting with your specific type of retinal cells and being processed by your unique neural architecture. The redness is in your mind, projected so perfectly onto the apple that it seems to be a property of the apple. Naive realism is the state of being unaware of this constructive process. It is the experience of living entirely within the world that our brain creates, without any awareness of the brain's creative act. We mistake the map for the territory. This bias has three key components as outlined by psychologist Lee Ross and his colleagues. First, there is the belief that I see things as they are. We trust our own perceptions and beliefs as a direct, unmediated readout of objective reality. Second, there is the belief that other rational people, if they are exposed to the same information and interpret it in a reasonable way, will come to the same conclusions as we do. We assume a shared, objective viewpoint. Third, when others do not share our view, we conclude that something must be wrong with them. We don't typically question our own perception. Instead, we infer that the other person must be biased by their ideology, blinded by their self-interest, too lazy or unintelligent to see the plain truth, or that they are being deliberately and maliciously contrary. This three-step process is a powerful recipe for conflict. It transforms a simple disagreement from a difference of opinion into a difference between a correct, objective view, mine, and a flawed, biased, or irrational view, yours. It makes genuine compromise and understanding incredibly difficult. If you believe you are in possession of the objective truth, and the other person is simply biased or irrational, then there is no real need to listen to their perspective or to take their argument seriously. The goal is not to understand them, but to correct their flawed vision, to show them the truth that is so obvious to you. This is why political, religious, and even personal disputes can become so intractable and self-righteous. Both sides are often operating from a deep, unshakable conviction of their own objectivity and the other side's bias. The psychology mystery of naive realism is its profound tenacity. Even after we have been intellectually exposed to the countless ways our perception and cognition are biased and constructed, through optical illusions, through the discovery of cognitive biases, through understanding the power of top-down processing, our gut feeling, in the moment is still one of direct, objective perception. the illusion is incredibly robust. This is because the constructive processes of the brain are, by design, unconscious and automatic. The brain doesn't want us to be aware of its constant editing, filling in, and interpreting. It wants to present us with a seamless, stable, and trustworthy reality that we can act upon with confidence. Naive realism is the user interface of the human mind, and it is a very, very convincing one. The mindfuck is the humbling realization that this feeling of objective certainty, which feels like a sign of our rational connection to the truth, is in fact the signature of our own deepest bias. The more certain we feel that we are seeing the world without any filter, the more we are in the grip of naive realism. True wisdom and rationality, paradoxically, might begin with the recognition of our own inherent subjectivity, the acknowledgement that we are always seeing the world from a perspective shaped by our biology, our history, our culture, and our beliefs. So, what is the antidote to this fundamental mind trap? It is the cultivation of intellectual humility and curiosity. It is the practice of what is sometimes called constructive alternativism. The active effort to imagine how a reasonable, rational person could come to see the world differently from us. When faced with a disagreement, instead of immediately assuming the other person is biased, we can ask the curious question: what information, what experiences, what values might they have that are leading them to see this situation in this way? This is the practice of perspective taking, the most powerful tool for breaking down the walls of naive realism. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to your own sense of the world around you. Acknowledge the powerful, intuitive feeling that you are seeing things just as they are, that your perceptions and beliefs are a direct reflection of objective reality. Feel the certainty that this belief brings. Now, with a sense of gentle, philosophical curiosity, entertain the possibility that this feeling of certainty is itself a subtle illusion, that you are always looking through the lens of your own unique mind, your own history, your own perspective. Let go of the need for your view to be the only objective one. Find deep relaxation in this intellectual humility, in the spaciousness that opens up when you acknowledge that other, different perspectives can also be valid and reasonable. Resting peacefully, not in the prison of your own certainty, but in the open, curious, and compassionate landscape of shared, subjective realities. Belief bias. Why we judge an argument's logic based on its conclusion. Let us now explore a subtle and insidious hidden mind trap that interferes with our ability to think clearly and rationally. It is a bias that affects not our perception of the world, but our evaluation of arguments about the world. This is the belief bias. It is our tendency to judge the strength, the validity, and the logic of an argument based not on how well its premises support its conclusion, but on how believable or plausible the conclusion itself seems to us. If an argument's conclusion aligns with our pre-existing beliefs, we are far more likely to judge it as a logical, well-reasoned argument. If its conclusion contradicts our beliefs, we are far more likely to scrutinize it for flaws and judge it as illogical. The belief bias is a powerful mindfuck because it allows our prior convictions to masquerade as logical reasoning. It is a psychology mystery that reveals how our desire for our beliefs to be true can blind us to the actual structure of the arguments we encounter, questioning our very capacity for objective, dispassionate logic. Understanding this bias is a crucial step towards clearer thinking and invites deep relaxation as you fall asleep. To understand the belief bias, we must first appreciate the nature of a logical argument. A formal argument consists of premises, statements of evidence or assumptions, and a conclusion that is supposed to follow from them. The key to logical evaluation is to separate the validity of the argument's structure from the truth of its content. A valid argument is one where the conclusion logically follows from the premises, regardless of whether the premises themselves are actually true. For example, all cats can fly. Socrates is a cat. Therefore, Socrates can fly. This is a logically valid argument. The conclusion follows perfectly from the premises. But, of course, the conclusion is false because the first premise is false. A sound argument is one that is both logically valid and has all true premises. The belief bias is our tendency to confuse these two things. We have a powerful, unconscious inclination to conflate the believability of the conclusion with the logical validity of the argument. This is a cognitive shortcut. It is much easier for our brains to check if a conclusion feels right, if it aligns with our existing knowledge and beliefs, than it is to perform the more difficult, effortful task of carefully analyzing the logical structure of the argument to see if the conclusion truly follows from the premises. Our mind takes the easy path, substituting the difficult question: is this argument valid? With the easier question: Do I believe this conclusion? Let's consider a classic example used in psychological experiments. Argument 1. Premise 1. No cigarettes are inexpensive. Premise 2. Some addictive things are inexpensive. Conclusion. Therefore, some addictive things are not cigarettes. Now, consider argument 2. Premise 1. No millionaires are hard workers. Premise 2. Some rich people are hard workers. Conclusion. Therefore, some rich people are not millionaires. Many people will quickly judge argument 1 as being logical and argument 2 as being illogical. Why? Because the conclusion of argument 1, some addictive things are not cigarettes, is believable and obviously true. The conclusion of argument 2, some rich people are not millionaires, is also believable and true. However, let's look at the logic. Argument 1 is actually logically invalid. The conclusion does not necessarily follow from the premises. Argument 2, on the other hand, is logically valid. The conclusion flows perfectly from the admittedly false premises. But because the premise, no millionaires are hard workers, is so unbelievable, our belief bias kicks in, and we are more likely to reject the entire argument as illogical without properly analyzing its structure. Our reaction to the content clouds our judgment of the form. The believability of the conclusion acts as a powerful heuristic that overrides our logical analysis. The mind fuck of the belief bias is its profound stealth. It operates completely unconsciously. We do not feel like we are being biased, we feel like we are being perfectly rational. We genuinely experience the argument with the believable conclusion as being more logical. Our own pre-existing beliefs create an illusion of logical insight. This questions our very ability to be objective evaluators of information, especially on topics we feel strongly about, like politics, religion, or ethics. When we listen to an argument from our own tribe, one that leads to a conclusion we already support, we tend to be very uncritical of its logic. We will accept even a flimsy or fallacious argument as long as it arrives at the right answer. But when we are presented with a logically sound argument that leads to a conclusion we despise, our minds will work overtime to find any possible flaw in its reasoning, no matter how small. We become brilliant logicians when motivated to debunk, and lazy thinkers when motivated to confirm. The psychology mystery is the interplay between our two cognitive systems, often called System 1 and System 2 thinking by psychologist Daniel Kahneman. System 1 is our fast, intuitive, automatic, and emotional thinking. System 2 is our slow, deliberate, effortful, and logical thinking. The belief bias is a classic example of System 1, the intuitive feeling of believability, overriding System 2, the effortful analysis of logical structure. To overcome the bias, we must consciously and deliberately engage System 2. We must actively inhibit our initial intuitive response to the conclusion and force ourselves to focus only on the formal relationship between the premises and the conclusion. This is cognitively demanding, which is why the bias is so common. This hidden mind trap has profound consequences for our social reality. It is a major contributor to the persistence of misinformation and the polarization of our public discourse. We are all prone to accepting poorly reasoned arguments that support our own side, and to rejecting well-reasoned arguments that support the other. It makes genuine rational debate incredibly difficult, as we are often not even evaluating the same arguments on the same logical grounds. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the way you evaluate information. Acknowledge the powerful intuitive pull of a believable conclusion. The way it can make an entire argument feel right, regardless of its underlying logic. See this belief bias not as a flaw in your intelligence, but as a fundamental feature of the mind's quest for cognitive ease, a powerful energy-saving shortcut. Find deep relaxation in the act of letting go of this intellectual struggle. You do not need to be a perfect logician right now. Simply acknowledge this subtle trap with a sense of gentle awareness. This awareness itself is the first and most important step towards clearer thinking. Resting peacefully, allowing your mind to move from the world of sharp logical distinctions into the more fluid, associative, and accepting world of dreams. Effort justification. Let us now explore a hidden mind trap that profoundly shapes our sense of value, a subtle bias that can transform struggle into satisfaction and hardship into meaning. We will delve into the powerful psychological principle of effort justification. This is our deep-seated, often unconscious, tendency to value an outcome more highly simply because we have invested significant effort, struggle, or even suffering to achieve it. The more we strive for something, the more precious it becomes to us in retrospect. This is not a simple, rational assessment of the outcome's intrinsic worth. It is a powerful cognitive maneuver our minds use to resolve the dissonance between the cost of our efforts and the reality of the reward. The mystery of effort justification is a profound secret of the subconscious, a mind fuck that reveals how our values are not just discovered, but are actively created by the very act of striving. Contemplating this alchemical process of turning struggle into worth can be a source of deep, validating relaxation as you fall asleep. The psychological foundation of effort justification lies in the theory of cognitive dissonance, which we have touched upon in other journeys. Cognitive dissonance is the uncomfortable mental state that arises when we hold two conflicting thoughts or when our behavior conflicts with our beliefs. We are powerfully motivated to reduce this discomfort. Imagine you have invested a colossal amount of effort, years of training, immense financial cost, or great personal sacrifice to achieve a particular goal. Perhaps it's joining an exclusive club, earning a difficult degree, or completing a grueling personal challenge. If after all that struggle the outcome turns out to be mediocre, disappointing, or simply not worth the immense cost, you are faced with a powerful dissonance. The thought, "I worked incredibly hard for this," clashes painfully with the thought, "This isn't actually that great." To resolve this uncomfortable state, your mind has two choices. It could admit that the effort was wasted, that you made a mistake, that the struggle was not worth it. But this can be a devastating blow to our sense of competence and our self-esteem. So, the mind often chooses the easier, more ego-protective path. It unconsciously changes its perception of the outcome. It inflates the value of the goal that was achieved. The internal monologue becomes, "This was so difficult, it must be incredibly valuable. The struggle was worth it. In fact, the struggle is what makes it so special." By increasing the perceived value of the outcome, the mind brings it into alignment with the immense effort expended, thereby resolving the dissonance and creating a coherent, self-justifying narrative. We don't just value the things we strive for, we value them because we strove for them. This hidden mind trap was famously demonstrated in a classic 1959 experiment by Elliot Aronson and Judson Mills. They invited female college students to join a group that would be holding discussions about the psychology of sex. To gain admission, however, the participants had to undergo an initiation. One group had a severe initiation, where they had to read a list of obscene words and sexually explicit passages out loud to a male experimenter, a highly embarrassing and difficult task at the time. Another group had a mild initiation, reading a list of more neutral, sex-related words. A third, control group had no initiation at all. Afterwards, all participants were allowed to listen in on what they believed was a live discussion by the group they had just joined. The discussion was, by design, incredibly dull, boring, and banal. Finally, the participants were asked to rate how much they liked the group and its discussion. The results were clear. The participants who had undergone the severe, embarrassing initiation rated the boring group and its discussion as significantly more interesting and valuable than those who had undergone the mild initiation or no initiation at all. To justify the immense effort and embarrassment of their initiation, they had unconsciously convinced themselves that the group they had joined was, in fact, highly desirable. This principle is at work all around us. It is the psychological engine behind the intense loyalty often found in groups that have difficult or painful hazing rituals, like fraternities or military units. The shared suffering and immense effort required to become a member inflates the perceived value of belonging to the group. It is also why we might cherish a piece of furniture we spent a frustrating weekend assembling ourselves, the IKEA effect, far more than a more expensive, pre-assembled piece. The effort is literally built into the value. It explains why we might be reluctant to abandon a difficult project, a challenging career path, or even a painful relationship, not just because of sunk costs, but because the sheer amount of effort we have invested makes it feel too valuable to let go. We have suffered for it, so it must be important. The mind fuck of effort justification is its profound reframing of our relationship with difficulty and suffering. We are evolutionarily wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. Yet, this bias shows how our minds can perform a kind of psychological alchemy, transforming the negative experience of struggle into the positive experience of value and meaning. It questions the very idea of objective value, suggesting that the worth of our goals is not just an intrinsic property, but something we actively and subjectively create through the narrative of our own striving. It is a testament to the mind's incredible capacity to create meaning even, and perhaps especially, from hardship. The psychology mystery lies in the unconscious nature of this process. We do not consciously decide to value something more because we worked hard for it. It is a subtle, automatic recalibration of our feelings and beliefs that happens behind the scenes, all in the service of maintaining a coherent and positive self-concept. It also highlights a potential vulnerability. This bias can be exploited by others to increase our commitment to a group or a cause. By making entry difficult and demanding, a group can ensure that its members will be highly invested and will value their membership intensely. Understanding effort justification can bring a profound sense of self-awareness. It can help us to evaluate our commitments more clearly. When we feel a strong attachment to a goal or a group, we can ask ourselves, do I value this for its own intrinsic merits, or is my perception of its value being inflated by the amount of effort I have put in? This can help us make wiser decisions about when to persist in a struggle and when it might be time to cut our losses and move on. It also offers a pathway to a more meaningful life. It suggests that meaning is often found not in ease and comfort, but in taking on difficult challenges and dedicating ourselves to them. The very act of striving can be the source of our deepest satisfactions. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the efforts and struggles of your own life, the challenges you have overcome, the goals you have striven for. Acknowledge the deep and natural tendency of your mind to find value and meaning in that struggle, to see the reward as being worthy of the effort. See this not as a logical flaw, but as a beautiful, adaptive, and meaning-making capacity of your own psyche, a way of honoring your own striving. Find deep relaxation in this understanding. Let go of any regrets about past struggles and instead see them as part of the rich story that has created the values you now hold, resting peacefully, with a quiet and profound appreciation for the mind's ability to turn the lead of effort into the gold of meaning. The Zeigarnik Effect. Let us now turn our attention to a subtle yet persistent and often frustrating hidden mind trap that operates in the background of our daily lives. It is the reason why the cliffhanger at the end of a television episode is so powerful, why a half-finished project can cause a low-grade hum of anxiety, and why an interrupted conversation can linger in your mind for hours. We will explore the Zeigarnik Effect. Named after the Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik who first studied it, this is the psychological tendency to remember unfinished or interrupted tasks far more readily and intensely than completed tasks. It is as if our subconscious mind opens a mental file for every task we begin, and that file remains open, active, and demanding of our cognitive resources until the task is marked as complete. This cognitive nagging is a psychology mystery that reveals the mind's deep, internal need for closure and completion. It's a mind fuck that questions our sense of mental control, revealing how our unseen mind can haunt our conscious awareness with its own agenda. Understanding this effect can be a key to managing mental clutter and finding deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The story of the discovery of the Zeigarnik Effect is a classic in psychology. In the 1920s, Bluma Zeigarnik was sitting in a busy Vienna cafe with her professor, Kurt Lewin. She was struck by the incredible memory of their waiter. He could remember a large, complex order with multiple items for a large table, without writing anything down. But the moment the bill was paid, he seemed to completely forget the order, unable to recall what they had just eaten. Zeigarnik was intrigued by this apparent paradox: a perfect memory for the unfinished task, the unpaid order, and a complete amnesia for the completed task, the paid order. This observation led her to a series of experiments. She would give participants a series of about 20 small puzzles or tasks to complete, such as stringing beads, solving a riddle, or performing a math problem. She would allow them to complete half of the tasks, but would interrupt them in the middle of the other half, telling them they had to move on. Later, after a delay, she would ask the participants which of the tasks they could remember working on. The results were consistent and powerful. The participants remembered the unfinished, interrupted tasks about twice as well as the completed ones. The act of interruption had created a state of tension in their minds, a need for completion that kept the memory of the task highly active and accessible to conscious recall. So, what is the psychological mechanism behind the Zeigarnik Effect? It is thought to be related to our brain's goal management system. When we set a goal or begin a task, our brain creates a specific task tension. This is a form of cognitive arousal that focuses our attention and mobilizes our mental resources towards achieving that goal. This tension remains active in our subconscious mind as long as the goal is unfulfilled. It is what keeps the goal on our mind, leading to intrusive thoughts and a persistent, nagging feeling that something is left undone. Once the task is completed, the tension is released, and the brain is free to close the file and discard the now irrelevant details from its short-term, active memory, freeing up cognitive resources for the next task. The Zeigarnik Effect is the subjective experience of this unresolved task tension. The haunting is the subconscious mind's way of reminding the conscious mind that a goal is still active and requires attention. The mind fuck of the Zeigarnik Effect is its revelation of how much of our mental chatter and anxiety is not about grand existential worries, but is simply the result of these open, unresolved loops in our minds. It questions our belief that we can simply forget about our responsibilities. Our subconscious has a much better memory and a more persistent agenda than we might think. It is a powerful internal taskmaster, constantly keeping track of our commitments and nagging us with reminders when they are not met. This can be a source of significant stress, a constant, low-level hum of mental noise created by the chorus of all our unfinished business. This psychology mystery has profound implications for our modern lives, which are often characterized by constant multitasking, interruptions, and a seemingly endless to-do list. Every email we open but don't respond to, every project we start but don't finish, every commitment we make but haven't acted on, creates one of these open loops in our minds. The cumulative effect of dozens of these open loops can be a significant source of mental clutter, anxiety, and a feeling of being overwhelmed. Our cognitive bandwidth is being consumed by the subconscious mind's effort to keep all of these unfinished tasks active. However, understanding the Zeigarnik Effect also provides us with a powerful set of tools for managing this mental clutter and finding a state of calm. The most obvious, of course, is to finish the task. The moment you complete the task, your brain experiences a release of that cognitive tension. But what if you can't finish it right away? The research has a surprising and very useful answer. It seems that you do not need to finish the task to close the loop. You just need to make a clear, concrete plan to finish it. The act of simply deciding when, where, and how you will tackle the unfinished task is often enough to satisfy the subconscious mind. Writing the task down on a to-do list and scheduling a specific time to work on it can effectively offload it from your active memory, quieting the intrusive thoughts and reducing the anxiety. Your subconscious trusts that the plan will be executed so it can release the tension. This is the psychological principle behind David Allen's getting things done methodology and the simple power of a well-kept planner. The effect is also used, often intentionally, in media and marketing. The cliffhanger at the end of a TV episode is a deliberate use of the Zeigarnik Effect. By leaving the story's central conflict unresolved, the creators ensure that the story remains an unfinished task in the viewer's mind, creating a cognitive tension that makes them highly motivated to tune in for the next episode to achieve closure. As you continue to fall asleep, bring a gentle awareness to any unfinished tasks that might be lingering in your mind, any emails to be sent, any projects to be completed, any conversations left hanging. See the thoughts about them not as a personal failure, but as the natural working of the Zeigarnik Effect, your mind's internal system for reminding you of open loops. You do not need to solve these tasks right now. Instead, you can use the secret of the effect to your advantage. Simply make a gentle, clear intention, a simple plan in your mind. I will attend to that tomorrow. Feel the subtle release of tension as you make that plan. You are giving your subconscious mind permission to let go for the night. Find deep relaxation in this act of conscious closure, in the quiet, calming knowledge that you have a plan, and that the haunting can cease. Resting peacefully with a mind that is clear, quiet, and free from the nagging pull of the unfinished. Choice supportive bias. Let us now explore a subtle yet powerful hidden mind trap that operates not in the moment of decision, but in the quiet aftermath, in the realm of our memory. This is the choice supportive bias. It is our pervasive, often unconscious, tendency to retroactively ascribe positive attributes to the option we have chosen and to downplay or forget the negative attributes, while simultaneously exaggerating the negative attributes of the options we have rejected. In essence, our memory doesn't just record our choices, it actively works as a public relations agent, rewriting history to make our decisions seem more rational, more foresight, and simply better than they actually were at the time. This is a profound psychology mystery of memory and self-concept. A mind fuck that questions the very reliability of our own personal history, revealing that our memory of the past is often a comforting, edited story, not a factual documentary. Understanding this bias can be a source of profound self-compassion and deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The choice supportive bias is another powerful mechanism that our minds use to avoid or reduce cognitive dissonance. As we've explored, making a difficult decision, especially between two closely matched alternatives, can be a source of anxiety. What if we made the wrong choice? This post-decision doubt, or buyer's remorse, is an uncomfortable state. The thought, I chose option A, can be dissonant with the thought, but option B had all these wonderful features that I've now missed out on. To reduce this dissonance and feel better about our decision, our subconscious mind gets to work, subtly and automatically editing our memories of the decision-making process. The process is a two-pronged act of mental revisionism. First, our memory of the chosen option is enhanced. We selectively remember its best features, perhaps even inventing or exaggerating positive attributes that it never had. The car we chose to buy is remembered as having been the obvious choice, a perfect blend of style and efficiency. The job we accepted is remembered as being the clear winner, with more potential for growth than we might have actually perceived at the time. Second, and just as importantly, our memory of the rejected options is systematically downgraded. We tend to forget or minimize their positive attributes and to focus on or even invent negative ones. The cars we didn't buy are remembered as being too expensive, unreliable, or just not right. The other job offers are recalled as being dead-end or uninspiring. By artificially increasing the perceived gap between the chosen and unchosen options, our memory creates a new, revised history in which our decision was not a difficult one between closely matched alternatives, but a simple, obvious choice between a superior option and several inferior ones. This makes us feel like savvy, rational decision makers, protecting our self-esteem and eliminating the anxiety of post-decision regret. The mindfuck of the choice-supportive bias is the realization that we cannot fully trust our own memory when it comes to our past decisions. The very act of choosing seems to trigger an unconscious process of historical revisionism. This questions our sense of a stable, objective past. It suggests that our personal history is not a fixed record, but a malleable narrative that is constantly being edited by our present psychological needs. The you, who made the decision in the past with all your doubts and uncertainties, is subtly rewritten by the you of today into a more confident and foresight character. This is a profound illusion, a form of self-deception that is so seamless and automatic that we are almost always completely unaware of it. This hidden mind trap has significant implications for our lives. On one hand, it can be a highly adaptive and beneficial bias. It helps us to move forward with our lives, to feel good about the choices we have made, and to avoid being paralyzed by chronic regret. It allows us to commit to our choices, our careers, our partners, our homes, by building a positive narrative around them. It is a psychological immune system that protects us from the pain of constantly second-guessing ourselves. However, the bias also has a dark side. By distorting our memory of past decisions, it can prevent us from learning from our mistakes. If we consistently remember our choices as being better than they were, we fail to accurately assess our own decision-making process. We might fail to recognize a pattern of impulsive or poorly reasoned choices because our memory is always fixing the narrative for us. To learn and grow, we need an honest appraisal of our past, and the choice-supportive bias is a powerful force that works against this honesty. This bias can also make us more susceptible to manipulation in the future. If we have been convinced to make a poor choice, for example, to buy a faulty product or to support a bad policy, this bias will kick in and make us more likely to defend that choice and to be receptive to further persuasion from the same source, in order to remain consistent and avoid the dissonance of admitting we were fooled. It is the psychological engine of brand loyalty and political partisanship, making us committed defenders of our past purchases. The psychology mystery lies in the effortless and unconscious nature of this memory distortion. It is not a deliberate, conscious act of lying to ourselves. It is a subtle, automatic process of selective recall and narrative reframing. It highlights the deep truth that our memory system is not designed to be a perfectly accurate historical record keeper. It is designed to help us maintain a coherent and positive sense of self in the present. The brain prioritizes psychological well-being over historical accuracy. So, how can we cultivate a more honest relationship with our own past choices? The first step is simple awareness. By knowing that the choice-supportive bias exists, we can approach our memories of past decisions with a healthy dose of skepticism and humility. We can remind ourselves that our current, rosy memory of a choice may not be the full picture. Keeping a decision journal, writing down our reasons, our feelings, and our uncertainties at the time of a major decision, can be a powerful antidote. This creates a factual record that we can later consult, a bulwark against the gentle tide of our memory's revisionism. Actively and charitably considering the merits of the options we rejected can also help to create a more balanced and realistic picture. We can ask ourselves, what was I genuinely tempted by in that other option? As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the long chain of choices that has brought you to this very moment. The big decisions and the small ones. Acknowledge the powerful and often helpful tendency of your mind to remember those choices in a positive light, to build a story of a life well lived. See this choice-supportive bias not as a flaw, but as a kind of inner kindness, your mind's way of protecting you from the pain of regret. Let go of any need to perfectly and accurately remember every past doubt or uncertainty. Find deep relaxation in the compassionate acceptance of your mind's storytelling nature. Resting peacefully, floating calmly in the gentle, self-supporting, and beautifully biased stream of your own personal history. Omission bias. Let us now explore a subtle and deeply ingrained hidden mind trap that profoundly shapes our moral judgments, often in ways that are logically inconsistent. We will delve into the omission bias. This is our pervasive, intuitive tendency to judge a harmful action as being morally worse, more blameworthy, than an equally harmful inaction or an omission that leads to the very same negative outcome. The act of doing harm feels different, more culpable, than the act of allowing harm to happen, even when we have the power to prevent it. This bias is a deep psychology mystery of our moral intuition, a mindfuck that questions the very consistency of our ethical framework and reveals a powerful, often irrational, preference for passivity over action when faced with difficult moral choices. Contemplating this subtle distinction between doing and allowing can lead to a more nuanced moral awareness and a state of deep relaxation as you fall asleep. To grasp the omission bias clearly, let's consider a classic thought experiment. Imagine a scenario where a child is having a severe allergic reaction and is about to die. In scenario A, a person, let's call him John, actively walks over and injects the child with a substance he knows will be fatal, and the child dies. In scenario B, a different person, Mark, sees that the child needs a life-saving injection of medicine that is on the table. Mark could easily administer the medicine, but he chooses to do nothing, to simply stand by and allow the child to die. Now, from a purely consequentialist perspective, the outcome in both scenarios is identical. A child has died and a person who could have prevented it did not. The level of harm is the same. However, our moral intuition for most of us reacts very differently. We judge John, the person who committed the harmful action, as a monstrous murderer. We judge Mark, the person who committed the harmful inaction, as callous, negligent, and morally reprehensible, but perhaps not quite as evil as John. The act of killing feels fundamentally worse than the act of letting die, even if the intention, to have the child die, and the outcome are the same. This intuitive and often powerful moral distinction between an act of commission and an act of omission is the omission bias at work. Why is this bias so deeply ingrained in our psychology? There are several potential explanations. One is rooted in the very nature of causality. An action feels like a more direct and tangible cause of an outcome. We can clearly trace the physical chain of events from John's injection to the child's death. The causal chain for an inaction is less direct. Mark didn't do anything, the death happened on its own, even though he had the power to stop it. Our minds seem to assign greater moral weight to direct, active causation than to passive, permissive causation. Another powerful factor is our sense of personal responsibility. The injunction, do no harm, often feels like a stronger and more fundamental moral rule than do good or prevent harm. The negative duty not to actively hurt someone feels more binding than the positive duty to help someone. This might have an evolutionary basis. For a social species to function, the absolute prohibition against actively harming members of the in-group is arguably more critical for stability than a rule mandating constant helpfulness. Our moral systems seem to be built around a primary focus on avoiding harmful commissions. The mindfuck of the omission bias is its revelation of a potential inconsistency at the heart of our moral intuition. If our primary concern is the outcome, the suffering and well-being of others, then why should it matter whether that outcome was brought about by an action or an inaction? A child is dead in both scenarios. From the victim's perspective, the distinction is meaningless. The bias questions whether our moral intuitions are truly focused on consequences, or whether they are more concerned with the perceived cleanliness of our own hands and the nature of our own agency. It suggests we are sometimes more concerned with not being the active cause of harm than we are with ensuring a good outcome. This hidden mind trap has profound and often troubling real-world implications. It can lead to a form of moral passivity. We might feel a strong moral obligation not to actively lie, but feel less of an obligation to speak up and correct a misunderstanding that we are allowing to persist. We might condemn a person who actively pollutes a river, but feel less culpable for our own passive consumption of products from polluting industries. The bias is particularly stark in medical ethics. Imagine a doctor treating a terminally ill patient in immense pain. Actively administering a lethal injection to end the patient's suffering, euthanasia, is legally and ethically considered far more problematic in many societies than the act of withholding or withdrawing life-sustaining treatment, letting the patient die, even if the doctor's intention and the final outcome are the same. The line between killing and letting die is a powerful moral boundary, a direct manifestation of the omission bias. This bias also influences parental decisions. In a famous study, participants were asked to imagine a scenario where a deadly flu was spreading. They were asked if they would vaccinate their child. They were told that the vaccine had a small risk of killing the child, but that the risk of dying from the flu itself was much higher. A significant number of parents chose not to vaccinate. They preferred the risk of their child dying from the disease, a harm caused by inaction, over the smaller risk of their child dying from the vaccine, a harm caused by their own direct action. The feeling of direct responsibility for a harm caused by their own action was so aversive that it led them to choose a path that was objectively riskier. The psychology mystery is the deep-seated, intuitive nature of this bias. It feels so right, so self-evident, that it is difficult to even see it as a bias. It is a fundamental part of our moral grammar. Challenging it requires a shift from an intuitive, deontological mode of thinking, do no harm, to a more calculating, consequentialist one, what action or inaction will lead to the best overall outcome. Neither mode is necessarily correct. They are different and sometimes conflicting systems of moral reasoning. As you continue to fall asleep, gently hold in your mind the two scenarios: the person who actively harms, and the person who passively allows the same harm to occur. Feel your own intuitive, emotional response to each. Acknowledge the powerful distinction your mind automatically makes between an action and an inaction. See this omission bias not as a flaw, but as a deep feature of your moral architecture, a preference for the path of non-interference. Now, with a sense of gentle, philosophical curiosity, contemplate the perspective of the victim, for whom the outcome is the same. Let this thought dissolve any rigid certainty about this moral distinction. Find deep relaxation in the complexity of this ethical puzzle, in the acknowledgement that our moral intuitions are not always simple or logically consistent. Resting peacefully within the profound, and sometimes paradoxical, nature of your own moral mind. Rosy Retrospection. Let us now turn our attention to a hidden mind trap that gently and consistently edits the story of our lives, a subtle bias that colors our perception of our own personal history. We will explore the phenomenon of rosy retrospection. This is our common, often unconscious, tendency to remember and rate past events more positively and fondly than we experienced them at the time they were actually happening. It is the psychological engine behind the nostalgic feeling of the good old days, the reason why past vacations, old friendships, and even difficult periods of our lives can acquire a warm, golden glow in our memory. This is not just a matter of forgetting the bad parts. It is an active, subconscious process of accentuating the positive. The mystery of rosy retrospection is a profound secret of the subconscious, a mind fuck that questions the very accuracy of our autobiographical memory, revealing that the past we inhabit in our minds is often a beautifully edited and slightly fictionalized version of the truth. Understanding this gentle bias can be a source of profound peace and self-compassion, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. To understand rosy retrospection, we must first appreciate the reconstructive nature of our memory, a theme we have touched upon before. Our memory is not a video camera that records events with perfect fidelity. It is a creative storyteller. When we recall a past event, we are not replaying a recording. We are actively reconstructing the memory from fragmented pieces of information, and this reconstruction process is highly susceptible to our current moods, beliefs, and psychological needs. Rosy retrospection is one of the primary editorial policies of this inner storyteller. Psychological studies have demonstrated this effect in various contexts. In one type of study, researchers will ask people on vacation to rate their enjoyment and feelings in real time, perhaps by carrying a device that prompts them for a rating several times a day. Then, sometime after the vacation is over, they will ask the same people to recall the vacation and rate their overall enjoyment of it. The results are consistent. The recalled enjoyment is almost always significantly higher than the average of the in-the-moment ratings. The memory of the vacation has become rosier than the experience of it. Why does this happen? Several psychological mechanisms are at play. One of the most important is a process of memory editing and selective forgetting. Our minds have a natural tendency to forget the mundane, neutral, or mildly unpleasant aspects of an experience more quickly than the peak positive moments. When we look back on a past vacation, the memory of the long, boring car ride, the slightly disappointing meal, or the moment of frustration with a travel companion tends to fade. What remains in our memory are the highlights: the beautiful sunset, the feeling of a perfect swim, the moment of shared laughter. Our memory constructs a highlight reel of the experience, and we then mistake this highlight reel for the entire experience, leading to a more positive overall evaluation. The subconscious mind is a skilled editor, cutting out the boring scenes to create a more enjoyable movie of our past. Another key factor is the reduction of cognitive dissonance. As we explored with choice supportive bias, we are motivated to feel good about the choices we have made. If we have invested significant time, money, and effort into an experience like a vacation or a life period like college, it would create dissonance to remember it as being mediocre or unpleasant. To justify the investment, our memory gently massages the past, emphasizing the good and minimizing the bad, to create a narrative that affirms our choice was a good one. The story becomes, "It was all worth it." Our current emotional state also powerfully influences our recall. When we are in a neutral or positive mood, we are more likely to access positive memories, a phenomenon known as mood-congruent recall. The very act of reminiscing about the past is often done in a relaxed, nostalgic state, which primes us to retrieve the warmer, happier aspects of those times. The feeling of nostalgia itself is a sweet, gentle emotion, and it colors the memories it touches. The mindfuck of Rosy Retrospection is the profound realization that our personal history is, in part, a comforting fiction, a story that has been gently curated by our subconscious to protect our well-being. It questions our very ability to know our own past objectively. The good old days may not have been as consistently good as we remember them. The struggles of the past, which seemed so difficult at the time, are often remembered with a sense of fondness and accomplishment once they are over. This is not to say our memories are lies, but that they are a particular version of the truth, a version that has been polished and edited for our own psychological comfort. This hidden mind trap has both positive and negative consequences. On the positive side, it is a powerful psychological coping mechanism. It allows us to maintain a positive outlook on our lives, to feel a sense of a coherent and generally happy personal history, and it can boost our self-esteem. It fosters social bonding as we collectively remember shared past experiences, like a legendary road trip with friends, in a more positive light. It is a source of comfort and a buffer against the pains and disappointments that are an inevitable part of any life. On the negative side, it can distort our decision-making for the future. If we consistently remember our past vacations as being more wonderful than they were, we might set ourselves up for disappointment on future trips by having unrealistic expectations. If we look back on a past relationship with an unhealthy nostalgia, remembering only the good times, we might be tempted to return to a situation that was actually quite damaging for us at the time. Rosy retrospection can sometimes prevent us from learning from the negative aspects of our past experiences. As you continue to fall asleep, gently allow your mind to drift back into your own past. Recall a fond memory, a time you remember with a warm, nostalgic glow. A childhood summer, a trip with friends, a past chapter of your life. Acknowledge the beautiful, warm feeling of this memory. Now, with a sense of gentle, compassionate curiosity, simply hold the possibility that the experience at the time may have been more complex, a mixture of good and bad, of joy and frustration. See the work of Rosy Retrospection not as a deception, but as a gift from your own mind, a way of finding the beauty and the meaning in your past, of creating a story that sustains you. Find deep relaxation in this understanding. Let go of the need for your memory to be a perfect, factual record, and instead, appreciate it as a beautiful, personal, and ever-evolving work of art, resting peacefully, wrapped in the warm, gentle, and comforting blanket of your own remembered past. The Planning Fallacy. Let us now turn our attention to a hidden mind trap that plagues our daily lives, a subtle yet relentlessly disruptive bias that is the source of countless missed deadlines, stressful last-minute scrambles, and projects that run wildly over budget. We will explore the planning fallacy. This is our powerful and pervasive tendency to underestimate the time, cost, and resources required to complete a future task, even when we have direct, personal experience of similar tasks taking longer than planned in the past. It is a specific and particularly stubborn form of the optimism bias, a cognitive blind spot that causes us to consistently favor a best-case scenario when planning for the future, while systematically neglecting the potential for complications, delays, and unforeseen obstacles. This psychology mystery is a profound mindfuck because it seems to be immune to experience. We can fall into the same trap over and over again, always convinced that this time our optimistic plan will work. Understanding this fallacy is a crucial step towards a more realistic, less stressful, and more compassionate relationship with our own plans and limitations, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The planning fallacy was first identified and named by the renowned psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, the pioneers who mapped out so much of our cognitive landscape. They noticed that we all tend to construct our plans by focusing on a single, idealized narrative of the future. This is what Kahneman calls taking the inside view. When you are planning a project, whether it's a home renovation, a work assignment, or even just your to-do list for the day, you tend to visualize the steps required to get from start to finish. You create a simple linear story in your mind. First, I will do A, then B, then C, and then I will be done. This story feels coherent and plausible. In constructing this narrative, we tend to focus on our own intentions, our skills, and the specific details of the current task. The problem is that this inside view is, by its very nature, optimistic and incomplete. It systematically fails to account for the countless, unpredictable external factors and internal disruptions that so often derail our plans in the real world. We fail to budget time for unexpected interruptions, for technology failures, for other people's delays, for our own moments of fatigue or loss of motivation, or for the simple, unforeseen complexities that inevitably arise in any non-trivial task. Our mental simulation of the future is a clean, sanitized version of reality, a best-case scenario that doesn't include the messy, chaotic texture of actual life. What is so mysterious and paradoxical about the planning fallacy is our failure to learn from experience. You might know from a lifetime of evidence that almost every project you have ever undertaken has taken longer than you initially planned. You might consciously acknowledge this fact. Yet, when you sit down to plan your next project, a strange form of amnesia seems to take hold, and you once again generate a wildly optimistic and unrealistic timeline. Kahneman argues that this is because we tend to treat each new project as a unique case, focusing on its specific details. We think, yes, my past projects were delayed, but that was because of X, Y, and Z. This project is different. This time, those things won't happen. We fail to take the outside view. The outside view is the antidote to the planning fallacy. It involves ignoring the specific details of the current project for a moment and instead looking at the statistical evidence from similar projects in the past. This is the practice of reference class forecasting. Instead of asking, how long will it take me to complete this specific task? You should ask, how long have similar tasks taken to complete in the past? This forces you to ground your estimate not in your optimistic internal narrative, but in the cold, hard data of past reality. When people are prompted to take the outside view, their estimates become significantly more realistic and much longer. But our natural, intuitive tendency is to always take the inside view, to believe that this time is different. The mindfuck of the planning fallacy is the revelation that our vision of the future is systematically, and often comically, biased towards optimism. It questions our self-perception as rational planners and reveals that our brains are natural storytellers that prefer a simple, hopeful narrative over a complex, realistic one. It is a powerful form of wishful thinking masquerading as a rational plan. The mystery is the robustness of this illusion, its ability to survive a lifetime of contradictory evidence. It seems that the cognitive comfort of an optimistic plan is often more psychologically appealing than the discomfort of confronting a more realistic and often more daunting timeline. The consequences of the planning fallacy are all around us, from the personal to the societal. On a personal level, it is a major source of stress, anxiety, and procrastination. We create an unrealistic plan, procrastinate because the task feels manageable, and then are forced into a frantic, last-minute rush when the true complexity of the task reveals itself. It leads to feelings of guilt and incompetence when we inevitably fail to meet our own unrealistic deadlines. On an institutional level, the planning fallacy is a plague on large-scale projects. It is the reason why so many government infrastructure projects, corporate initiatives, and even military campaigns run dramatically over budget and over time. The planners, each taking an optimistic, inside view, systematically underestimate the costs and the potential for unforeseen complications. So, how can we escape this pervasive hidden mind trap? As mentioned, the primary tool is to consciously force ourselves to take the outside view. Before finalizing a plan, we can stop and ask, on past projects of a similar nature, what was the actual completion time? We can consult with others who have completed similar tasks and ask them for a realistic assessment. This process of benchmarking against reality is a powerful anchor against our own internal optimism. Another effective technique is to perform a pre-mortem. This involves imagining that it is the future and your project has failed spectacularly. You then work backwards to generate all the plausible reasons why it failed. This imaginative exercise forces you to move beyond the optimistic success narrative and to actively consider the potential obstacles, delays, and risks that you might have overlooked. It is a way of preemptively identifying the things that are likely to go wrong, so that you can build contingency time and resources into your plan. Breaking down large projects into smaller, more concrete tasks can also help. It is easier to realistically estimate the time required for a small, well-defined task than for a large, abstract one. The sum of these more realistic small estimates will often be much larger than the initial, optimistic estimate for the project as a whole. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to your own plans for tomorrow, for the week, for the future. Acknowledge the natural human tendency to create optimistic, best-case scenario narratives. The planning fallacy. See this not as a personal failing but as a universal feature of the mind, a bias towards hope and simplicity. Let go of any guilt for past plans that have gone awry, and instead find a sense of empowered relaxation in understanding this mechanism. You can learn to be a wiser, more compassionate planner for yourself, by taking the outside view, by preparing for obstacles, by grounding your plans in reality rather than just in hope, resting peacefully, released from the tyranny of the urgent and the stress of unrealistic expectations, in the calm, spacious, and realistic timeline of the present moment. Restraint bias. Let us now turn our attention to a subtle yet powerful hidden mind trap that often undermines our best intentions and leads us into self-defeating behaviors. We will explore the restraint bias. This is our consistent tendency to overestimate our ability to resist temptation. When we are in a cool, rational, and unaroused state, we look to the future and feel a strong, often misplaced confidence in our own self-control. We believe that when the moment of temptation arrives, our willpower, our reason, and our commitment to our long-term goals will be strong enough to overcome the visceral pull of immediate gratification. Yet time and again we find that when we are in a hot, aroused, or craving state, our self-control can mysteriously evaporate and we succumb. The restraint bias is a mindfuck of self-knowledge, a psychology mystery that reveals a profound disconnect between our cold self and our hot self. It questions our very ability to predict our own future behavior, and it is a primary reason why our New Year's resolutions so often fail. Understanding this bias is a crucial step towards cultivating genuine self-control through wisdom rather than sheer, overestimated willpower, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The restraint bias is a specific form of what psychologists call a hot-cold empathy gap. When we are in a cold state, calm, satiated, and not experiencing any strong visceral drives, we find it incredibly difficult to imagine or appreciate the sheer power of a hot state, a state of intense craving, emotion, or arousal. When you are full after a healthy meal, it is easy to believe that you will be able to resist the dessert tray at the party later that night. Your cold self, the rational planner, makes a confident prediction based on its current, satisfied state. It underestimates the immense power of the future hot state, where you are surrounded by the sights and smells of delicious food, perhaps feeling a bit socially anxious, and your body is flooded with craving signals. The person making the decision in the moment is, in a sense, a different person from the one who made the plan, and the hot self often wins. This bias was powerfully demonstrated in a series of studies by psychologist Loren Nordgren and his colleagues. In one experiment, they asked a group of heavy smokers who were trying to quit to make a choice. They could either perform a task that would require them to hold an unlit cigarette in their hand, a high-temptation situation, for a small financial reward, or perform a different task with no cigarette for a smaller reward. The crucial part was when they made the choice. Half the participants made the choice while they were in a hot state of craving, having abstained from smoking for several hours. The other half made the choice while they were in a cold, satiated state, having just smoked a cigarette. The results were clear. The smokers in the cold, satiated state were far more likely to confidently choose the high-temptation task, overestimating their ability to resist the urge to smoke. The smokers who were currently experiencing the craving, who had a direct, visceral understanding of its power, were much more likely to be cautious and choose the safer, low-temptation option. They had a more realistic view of their own self-control. The restraint bias is not about a lack of sincerity. Our intention to eat healthy, to save money, to stop procrastinating, or to quit a bad habit is often genuine and deeply felt when we are in our calm, cold state. The failure is not one of intention but one of foresight. We fail to appreciate how our own decision-making system changes under the influence of visceral drives. In a hot state, our focus narrows to the immediate present, the short-term reward looms incredibly large, and the long-term consequences seem distant and abstract. Our sophisticated, future-oriented prefrontal cortex is temporarily hijacked by the more primitive, reward-seeking parts of our brain. The mind fuck of the restraint bias is its profound challenge to our sense of a unified, stable self. It suggests that we are not a single, consistent agent, but rather a kind of timeshare between two different selves. A cool, rational planner and a hot, impulsive doer. And the planner is a consistently poor judge of the doer's strength. This questions the very idea of willpower as a stable character trait. It suggests that self-control is not just about having a strong will, but about having the wisdom to understand the power of our visceral states and to proactively manage our environment to avoid overwhelming temptation in the first place. This psychology mystery has profound implications for understanding a wide range of self-control failures. It helps to explain why people break their diets by putting themselves in situations with too much tempting food, overestimating their ability to just have one. Why they fall into debt by carrying a credit card, overestimating their ability to resist impulse purchases, and why they relapse into addictive behaviors by re-entering a high-Q environment, believing they are cured and can handle it. The bias leads us to rely on our own flawed self-control instead of using more effective, situation control strategies. So, what is the antidote to the restraint bias? The key is to shift from a strategy of resistance to a strategy of avoidance and pre-commitment. This requires a dose of humility, an acknowledgement of our own predictable irrationality. If you know that your hot self is likely to make poor choices, the solution is not to simply try harder in the moment of temptation. The solution is for your cold, rational self to be a better, more compassionate strategist, to make decisions now that will protect your future self from itself. This could mean using pre-commitment devices. If you want to save money, you can set up an automatic transfer to a savings account that is difficult to access. You are binding your future self, preventing it from making an impulsive choice. If you want to eat healthier, the strategy is not to fill your house with junk food and rely on willpower, but to simply not buy the junk food in the first place, thereby removing the temptation from your environment. The most successful self-control is often the one that is never needed because the situation has been wisely managed in advance. It also involves a greater degree of self-awareness and empathy for our future self. We can learn to recognize the conditions that trigger our hot states, stress, fatigue, loneliness, and to develop healthier coping mechanisms. We can practice mindfulness to become more aware of cravings as they arise, observing them as transient sensations rather than as commands that must be obeyed. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to your own intentions for the future. The goals you have set, the changes you wish to make. Acknowledge the calm, rational, cold self that is making these plans right now. Now, with a sense of compassionate realism, acknowledge the existence of your future hot self, the self that will be tired, stressed, and faced with temptation. Let go of the illusion of perfect, unshakable willpower. Find deep relaxation in the wise and humble strategy of planning for your own human fallibility. Recognize that true self-control is not about being a superhero of resistance, but about being a gentle and clever architect of your own environment. Resting peacefully with a more compassionate and realistic understanding of the dynamic, and sometimes contradictory, nature of your own wonderful human mind. Cryptomnesia. Let us now explore a strange and fascinating hidden mind trap that operates at the very heart of human creativity and knowledge. It is a subtle glitch in our memory system, a form of cognitive misattribution that can lead to both embarrassing accidents of plagiarism and genuine, albeit mistaken, moments of creative inspiration. We will delve into the mystery of cryptomnesia. The term, from the Greek for hidden memory, describes the experience of generating a thought, a phrase, a melody, or an idea that you genuinely believe is a novel, original creation, when in fact, you are unconsciously retrieving and misattributing a memory of a past experience. It is the experience of unintentional plagiarism, of mistaking a memory for a new idea. This is a profound mindfuck that questions the very origins of our thoughts and the nature of creativity itself, revealing how the vast, unseen library of our subconscious mind can sometimes present old information as a new revelation. Contemplating this strange blurring of past and present, of recall and creation, can be a source of deep, humble relaxation as you fall asleep. The experience of cryptomnesia can be unsettling. A musician might spend weeks working on a new melody, feeling a surge of creative pride, only to be told later that they have perfectly reproduced a song they heard on the radio years ago. A writer might craft a beautifully turned phrase, believing it to be a moment of pure inspiration, only to later discover it in a book they read long ago. A scientist might have a eureka moment, believing they have discovered a new solution to a problem, only to find that the solution had been proposed by a colleague in a meeting months earlier. In all these cases, the experience is not one of deliberate, conscious theft. It is one of genuine, subjective originality. The individual is not lying, their own mind is, in a sense, tricking them. So, how does this strange mind trap work? It appears to be a specific type of source memory failure. Our memory system has two distinct components: the memory for the content of an experience, the idea, the melody, the fact, and the memory for the source of that experience, who said it, where you read it, when you heard it. Cryptomnesia occurs when the content of a memory is retrieved, but the source memory fails to be retrieved along with it. The idea comes to mind detached from its original context. Because there is no accompanying feeling of remembering, no tag that says, "This came from that book," the brain's default assumption is that if a thought is present in the mind and is not tagged as a memory, it must be a self-generated, original thought. Several factors can increase the likelihood of cryptomnesia. The passage of time is a major one. The longer it has been since we were exposed to the original idea, the more likely the source memory is to have faded, while the content memory remains. The original exposure might have also been in a state of distraction, where we processed the information but did not pay close attention to its source, leading to a weak encoding of the contextual details. The sheer volume of information we are exposed to in the modern world also plays a role. We are constantly consuming ideas from books, articles, conversations, and the internet, and it becomes increasingly difficult for our brains to keep track of the origin of every single thought. The psychology mystery of cryptomnesia is its revelation of the profound separation between different memory systems in our subconscious mind. It shows that knowing something and knowing that you know it are two different mental states handled by different neural processes. The feeling of originality is not a reliable guide to actual originality. It is simply a feeling that arises in the absence of a retrieved source memory. This questions our very sense of creative authorship. How many of our best ideas are truly our own, and how many are the unacknowledged echoes of past influences, the ghosts of forgotten memories? The mindfuck is the humbling realization that our minds are, in a sense, constantly plagiarizing from our own past experiences without our permission. The line between memory and creativity is far more blurry than we intuitively believe. This doesn't mean that true creativity doesn't exist, but it does suggest that much of what we call creation is actually a process of unconscious synthesis, of taking old, forgotten ideas and combining them in new and interesting ways. The truly original part might not be the creation of the building blocks, the ideas, but the novel way in which they are assembled. The subconscious mind is a brilliant collagist, constantly cutting and pasting from our vast library of memories to generate new-seeming compositions. Cryptomnesia is the moment when we forget to cite the original sources. This has profound implications for our understanding of creative genius. The genius may not be someone who creates ideas from a vacuum, but someone who has a particularly rich and well-organized library of subconscious memories and a cognitive style that is particularly adept at making novel connections between them. Their originality is a testament to the depth of their experience and the associative power of their unseen mind. Understanding cryptomnesia can also foster a greater sense of intellectual humility and a more collaborative view of knowledge. It encourages us to be more diligent in tracking our sources and to be more generous in acknowledging our influences. It also suggests we should be more compassionate when apparent instances of plagiarism occur, as they can sometimes be the result of this genuine, unconscious memory error rather than deliberate intellectual theft, though this does not, of course, excuse it. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the vast, silent library of your own memory. Picture the countless books, articles, conversations, and experiences that are stored in the deep, quiet stacks of your subconscious mind. Acknowledge that you do not have a perfect card catalog for this library. Sometimes a book is pulled from the shelf and presented to you, its cover and author's name mysteriously erased, and it feels like a brand new idea. See this process of cryptomnesia not as a flaw, but as a testament to the incredible richness of your own stored experience and the creative, if sometimes forgetful, nature of your mind. Find deep relaxation in letting go of the pressure of pure originality. Embrace yourself as a synthesizer, a connector of ideas, a participant in a vast, ongoing conversation. Resting peacefully, floating calmly in the immense, mysterious, and beautifully associative ocean of your own memory. Functional fixedness. We have just explored cryptomnesia, a hidden mind trap where the past masquerades as the present. Let us now turn to a different kind of mental block, one that constrains our creativity and problem-solving in the here and now. We will delve into the mystery of functional fixedness. This is a powerful cognitive bias that limits our ability to use an object in a way that is different from its traditional or most obvious purpose. When we see a hammer, our mind automatically and powerfully sees it as a tool for pounding nails. This is its function, and we become fixed on that function, making it incredibly difficult to see the hammer as, for example, a potential paperweight, a pendulum bob, or a lever. Functional fixedness is a profound secret of the subconscious, a mindfuck that reveals how our own knowledge and experience can become a cage, blinding us to novel solutions that are often hiding in plain sight. It questions the very nature of creative thinking, suggesting that innovation is often not about adding new things, but about seeing the things we already have in a new light. Understanding this mental block is the first step to overcoming it, inviting deep relaxation through the gentle loosening of our rigid conceptual categories as you fall asleep. The concept of functional fixedness was famously demonstrated by the Gestalt psychologist Carl Duncker in the 1940s with his classic candle problem. Participants were led into a room and given a simple task: to attach a candle to a corkboard on the wall in such a way that the wax would not drip onto the floor below. They were given the candle, a book of matches, and a box full of thumbtacks. The solution requires a creative leap. Many participants try to melt the candle's wax to stick it to the wall, or try to pin the candle directly to the board with the tacks, but these approaches fail. The key to solving the problem is to overcome functional fixedness regarding the box of thumbtacks. Most participants see the box only as a container for the tacks. Its function is fixed. The creative solution is to realize that the box itself can be a tool. You must empty the tacks out of the box, use one of the tacks to pin the box to the wall, creating a small shelf, and then place the candle inside the box. The difficulty people have in arriving at this solution is a direct measure of functional fixedness. Their perception of the box's purpose is so rigid that they cannot see its alternative use as a platform. The very knowledge that this is a box for tacks becomes a barrier to seeing it as a potential shelf. This demonstrates how our prior knowledge, which is usually a powerful asset, can become a cognitive constraint, a set of mental blinkers that narrows our field of possible solutions. So, why does our brain operate this way? Like many of the subtle biases we've explored, functional fixedness is a byproduct of an otherwise highly efficient cognitive process. Our brains are designed to be efficient. When we learn what an object is for, the brain creates a strong, automatic association between the object and its primary function. This is incredibly useful for navigating the world quickly. When you need to pound a nail, you don't want to spend time creatively considering all the other possible uses of a hammer. You want your brain to immediately and automatically tell you, hammer is for hitting. This automaticity, this chunking of object and function, is a cognitive shortcut that saves immense time and mental energy in our daily lives. Functional fixedness is the downside of this efficiency. The very process that makes us experts at using tools for their intended purpose is the same process that makes us novices at using them for unintended purposes. The mindfuck of functional fixedness is the realization that the solutions to many of our problems might be sitting right in front of us, but are rendered invisible by our own rigid, pre-existing concepts. It questions our sense of our own creativity, suggesting that our inability to find a solution is often not due to a lack of resources, but to a lack of cognitive flexibility. The prison is not in the world, it is in our own minds, in the fixed labels and categories we have unconsciously placed upon the objects and ideas around us. The walls of the box are not physical but psychological. This psychology mystery has profound implications for creativity, innovation, and problem-solving in all aspects of life. In engineering, a breakthrough might come when a designer realizes that a material designed for one purpose has an unexpected property that makes it perfect for a completely different application. In business, an innovative strategy might involve using a company's existing assets in a novel way that no one had previously considered. In our personal lives, solving a difficult problem might require us to think outside the box, by repurposing the tools and resources at our disposal. The very phrase "thinking outside the box" is a direct metaphor for overcoming functional fixedness. So, how can we learn to loosen the grip of this powerful hidden mind trap? Several techniques have been shown to be effective. One is to practice decategorization. This involves consciously breaking down an object into its component parts and its fundamental properties, stripped of its functional label. Instead of seeing a box, you can train yourself to see a rectangular piece of cardboard with 4 sides and a bottom. This more abstract, purely physical description makes its alternative uses, like a platform, easier to see. Another technique is to use what is called generic parts technique. When you are stuck on a problem, you can ask yourself, for each object you have, can I break this down further? And what are its basic properties? This encourages a more abstract and less functionally fixed view of your resources. Simply being aware of the bias is also a powerful first step. When you feel stuck, you can consciously ask yourself, am I suffering from functional fixedness? Am I only seeing these objects in their usual way? What other purpose could they serve? This act of metacognition, of thinking about your own thinking, can help to break the automaticity of the bias. Interestingly, studies have shown that young children are often less susceptible to functional fixedness than adults. This is because their conceptual knowledge is less entrenched. They have not yet formed the strong automatic associations between objects and their functions, so they are freer to explore and discover novel uses for things. The creative genius of a child playing with a cardboard box, transforming it into a spaceship, a castle, or a car, is a beautiful example of a mind that is not yet constrained by functional fixedness. In a sense, the process of becoming an expert involves a trade-off. We gain efficiency, but we can lose a degree of creative flexibility. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the objects in the room around you or in your memory: a lamp, a table, a book. Acknowledge the primary purpose your mind automatically assigns to each one. See the powerful, efficient, and hidden process of categorization at work. Now, with a sense of gentle, playful curiosity, imagine these objects freed from their functions. See the lamp not as a source of light, but as a collection of shapes, a piece of metal and glass. See the book not as something to be read, but as a physical object, a paperweight, a doorstop. Let the rigid categories of your mind soften and become more fluid. Find deep relaxation in this sense of creative freedom, in the knowledge that the world is richer with possibilities than our habitual mind often allows us to see. Resting peacefully in a world where every object holds a secret, hidden potential, waiting for a creative mind to see it anew. The law of the instrument, Maslow's hammer. Having just explored functional fixedness, the hidden mind trap that prevents us from seeing novel uses for a familiar object, let us now turn to its close cousin, a bias that is not about a single object, but about our entire approach to problem solving. We will delve into the law of the instrument, more famously known as Maslow's hammer. The concept is most often paraphrased by the memorable adage, if all you have is a hammer, everything begins to look like a nail. This is the profound cognitive bias of over-relying on a familiar tool, a tendency to approach diverse problems with a single favored method or mindset, whether or not it is the most appropriate. It is a form of cognitive tunnel vision, a mystery of the mind where our own expertise can become a cage, blinding us to better solutions. The mind fuck is realizing that our greatest strengths can also be our greatest weaknesses, questioning the very nature of expertise and problem solving. Understanding this trap is a crucial step towards cultivating mental flexibility, inviting deep relaxation through a gentle loosening of our grip on our favorite tools as you fall asleep. The concept was first articulated in this form by the psychologist Abraham Maslow in 1966, although similar ideas were expressed by others, like the philosopher Abraham Kaplan. The hammer is a metaphor for any tool, technique, theory, or worldview that we have become particularly skilled at using. This could be a literal tool for a craftsman, a specific therapeutic approach for a psychologist, a particular financial model for an economist, or a favored philosophical framework for a thinker. Because we are comfortable and competent with our hammer, we tend to apply it to every situation we encounter, whether that situation is a nail or not. The psychology behind Maslow's hammer is a combination of several cognitive principles. The first is simple cognitive ease. Using a familiar tool or a well-practiced method requires less mental effort than learning a new one. Our brains, as energy-saving devices, are naturally inclined to follow the path of least resistance. When faced with a new problem, the first solution that comes to mind is often the one we have used most successfully in the past. It is cognitively available and feels comfortable. The second factor is confirmation bias. Once we have decided to use our familiar hammer, we tend to interpret the problem in a way that justifies its use. We selectively focus on the aspects of the problem that look like a nail while ignoring the aspects that don't fit. We frame the situation to match our tool, rather than choosing the tool to match the situation. This reinforces our belief in the universal applicability of our favored method. The third factor is the nature of expertise itself. As we become more deeply expert in a particular domain or with a particular tool, our neural pathways become highly optimized for that way of thinking. This is what allows for the effortless flow state of an expert. But this deep specialization can come at a cost, a loss of cognitive flexibility. The expert's mind can become so entrenched in its own successful models that it struggles to see problems from a fresh, naive perspective. This is why major breakthroughs in a scientific field are sometimes made by outsiders or by young researchers who are not yet fully indoctrinated into the dominant paradigms. They are not yet holding a single, powerful hammer. The mindfuck of the law of the instrument is its paradoxical implication that greater expertise can sometimes lead to poorer problem solving. Our knowledge, our greatest asset, can become a set of intellectual blinkers, preventing us from seeing simpler or more creative solutions that lie outside our domain of competence. It questions the very idea of a universal expert. A person can be a genius in their own field, but a fool when they try to apply their field-specific hammer to every other problem in the universe. We see this in the physicist who tries to reduce all of human psychology to simple equations, or the economist who tries to explain all of human relationships in terms of rational choice and utility, or the psychoanalyst who sees every slip of the tongue as a sign of a deep, repressed conflict. They are all in their own way swinging Maslow's hammer. This hidden mind trap is visible everywhere. In medicine, a surgeon might be more inclined to see a problem as requiring a surgical solution, while a psychiatrist might see the same symptoms as requiring a therapeutic one. Each is using their familiar, trusted tool. In business, a company that has become successful through a particular strategy, e.g., aggressive marketing, might continue to apply that same strategy to every new market and every new problem, even when the situation calls for a different approach, like a focus on product innovation. In our personal lives, we can fall into this trap in our relationships. A person who is highly analytical might try to solve an emotional conflict with their partner by using pure logic, failing to see that the situation calls for a different tool, like empathy and emotional validation. So, what is the antidote to this pervasive bias? The key is the cultivation of intellectual humility and a beginner's mind. It is the willingness to acknowledge the limits of one's own expertise and the potential value of other tools and perspectives. One of the most powerful strategies is to cultivate a toolbox rather than a single hammer. This means actively learning about different models, different disciplines, and different ways of thinking, even if you don't become an expert in all of them. This interdisciplinary approach, championed by thinkers like Charlie Munger with his concept of mental models, allows you to look at a problem from multiple perspectives, to see it not just as a nail, but perhaps as a screw, a bolt, or something that needs to be glued. Actively seeking out and listening to the perspectives of people with different kinds of expertise is also crucial. When faced with a complex problem, instead of just relying on your own familiar methods, you can ask, how would an engineer see this? How would an artist see it? How would a biologist see it? This practice of collaborative, multi-perspective problem solving is a powerful organizational antidote to Maslow's hammer. On a personal level, the practice of mindfulness can help. By creating a space of quiet awareness, we can learn to notice our own automatic, habitual thought patterns. We can observe the mind as it instinctively reaches for its favorite hammer, and in that moment of observation we can create a space to ask, Is this really the right tool for this job? As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the tools you use most often in your own life, your favored ways of thinking, your go-to problem-solving strategies. Acknowledge their value, their power, the expertise you have developed with them. See your hammer with a sense of appreciation. Now, with a sense of gentle curiosity, hold it lightly. Acknowledge that it is a tool, not the only tool. Contemplate the vast world of problems that are not nails. Find deep relaxation in the liberating idea of having a whole toolbox, in the humility of knowing that your own perspective is always limited, and in the quiet commitment to being a lifelong learner, always open to new tools, new methods, and new ways of seeing the world. Resting peacefully with a mind that is not just sharp but also flexible, open, and wise. System justification. We have explored many hidden mind traps that affect our individual thoughts and choices. Let us now turn to a powerful and deeply paradoxical bias that shapes our relationship with the very social and political systems we inhabit. We will delve into the theory of system justification. This is the surprising and often unconscious motivation that people have to see their existing social, economic, and political systems as good, fair, legitimate, and desirable. This is not simply about the powerful defending a system that benefits them. The profound mystery is that this bias is often strongest among those who are most disadvantaged by the status quo. People in low status or exploited groups will often, paradoxically, internalize and defend the very ideologies that justify their own subordination. This is a profound mindfuck that questions our traditional models of self-interest and group conflict. It reveals a deep psychological need for order and stability that can sometimes override our own personal or group interests, a secret of the subconscious that helps explain the remarkable stability of social hierarchies. Contemplating this hidden force can be a source of deep, if unsettling, relaxation as you fall asleep. The theory of system justification was developed by social psychologist John Jost and his colleagues. It proposes that in addition to our ego justification needs, the need to feel good about ourselves, and our group justification needs, the need to feel good about our in-group, we also have a fundamental system justification motive. This is a deep-seated, largely unconscious need to believe that the existing status quo is just legitimate and the way things are supposed to be. Why would we have such a need, especially if the system is not serving us well? The theory suggests this motivation stems from a fundamental need to reduce uncertainty and threat. A social system, even a deeply flawed or unjust one, provides a sense of order, predictability, and shared reality. The alternative, the belief that the system is arbitrary, corrupt, or on the verge of collapse, can be a source of profound existential anxiety. It is often psychologically easier and more comforting to believe that the existing order is fair and legitimate than to confront the terrifying possibility that one is living in a chaotic, unjust, or meaningless world. Therefore, we are often unconsciously motivated to rationalize and defend the status quo as a form of psychological self-soothing, a way to manage our existential dread. This leads to the central paradox of the theory. This system justification motive can often be strongest among those who have the most objective reasons to be dissatisfied with the system. This is a form of cognitive dissonance on a societal scale. The thought, I am a good and worthy person, clashes with the thought, but the system I live in places me at the bottom and treats me unfairly. To resolve this painful dissonance, an individual might change their belief about the system. They might internalize the system's own justifying ideologies, coming to believe that the hierarchy is, in fact, fair and that their own low position is a result of their own failings or is somehow deserved. This is a tragic, but psychologically understandable, way of making sense of a painful social reality. It is less painful to believe, I am in my proper place in a just system, than to believe, I am a victim in an unjust system. We see evidence of this in what is sometimes called out-group favoritism, where members of a disadvantaged group will sometimes express more positive attitudes towards the high-status outgroup than towards their own in-group. We can also see it in the phenomenon of internalized oppression, where individuals from marginalized groups adopt the negative stereotypes that the dominant society holds about them. From a system justification perspective, these are not necessarily signs of self-hatred, but are tragic attempts to create a sense of coherence and justice in an unjust world. By accepting the system's ideology, the world, however painful, at least makes sense. The mindfuck of system justification is its profound challenge to traditional conflict theories, like Marxism, which assume that disadvantaged groups will naturally and inevitably rise up to challenge an oppressive system. System justification theory suggests that there is a powerful psychological headwind, a cognitive and motivational barrier, that works against social change. The very people who have the most to gain from changing the system are often, at an unconscious level, the most psychologically invested in defending it, because to challenge it is to invite anxiety, uncertainty, and a profound sense of dissonance. This helps to explain the remarkable stability of social inequalities and the slow, difficult nature of social progress. This psychology mystery also explains our tendency to engage in victim blaming on a systemic level. When we see widespread poverty or inequality, the Just-World Fallacy, which is a close cousin of system justification, can lead us to blame the individuals for their plight. But system justification theory adds another layer. We also blame the victims as a way of defending our belief in the fairness of the overall economic or social system. If we can believe that the poor are poor because they are lazy, then we don't have to confront the uncomfortable possibility that our economic system itself is unfair or flawed. So, how is social change ever possible? It often requires a powerful event or a new narrative that shatters the perceived legitimacy of the status quo. It requires consciousness raising, a process where people become aware of the systemic nature of their disadvantage and stop blaming themselves. It requires the creation of a strong, alternative social identity that can provide the sense of belonging and self-worth needed to challenge the dominant ideology. And it requires the courage to tolerate the profound uncertainty and anxiety that comes with trying to change the world. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the social, political, and economic systems that structure your own life. Acknowledge the deep, often unconscious, need to believe that these systems are fair, just, and good. See this system justification motive not as a sign of gullibility, but as a profound human need for order, meaning, and a sense of safety. Now, with a sense of compassionate awareness, acknowledge how this same need can sometimes lead us to defend a flawed status quo, to rationalize inequality, or to blame the victims of an unjust system. You do not need to become a revolutionary tonight. Simply find deep relaxation in this nuanced understanding, in the recognition of the powerful psychological forces that create social stability, even at a high cost, resting peacefully with a more compassionate and critical awareness of the silent, powerful, and deeply mysterious ways we all seek to make sense of and to justify our shared social world. The Semmelweis Reflex. We have explored the many hidden mind traps and subtle biases that shape our perception of ourselves, of others, and of our social systems. Let us now turn to a profound and often tragic bias that governs our relationship with knowledge itself. We will explore the Semmelweis Reflex. The term refers to our reflexive, almost automatic tendency to reject new evidence or new knowledge simply because it contradicts our established norms, beliefs, or paradigms. It is named after the 19th century Hungarian physician Ignaz Semmelweis, whose story is a tragic and powerful parable of the human mind's resistance to paradigm-shifting truth. The Semmelweis reflex is the immune system of our worldview, a powerful psychological mechanism that attacks and rejects new ideas that threaten its established order. It is a profound psychology mystery, a mind-fuck that questions our self-perception as rational, evidence-based beings, revealing that we are often, at a deep, unconscious level, guardians of our own ignorance. Contemplating this reflex is a pathway to intellectual humility and a state of deep relaxation as you fall asleep. To understand this bias, we must first hear the tragic story of Ignaz Semmelweis. In the 1840s, Semmelweis was a doctor at a Vienna hospital, and he was tormented by a mystery. The hospital had two maternity clinics. The first clinic, staffed by doctors and medical students, had an appallingly high mortality rate from a disease called childbed fever. Sometimes as high as 10 to 35% of the mothers died. The second clinic, staffed entirely by midwives, had a much lower rate, often less than 2%. The women of Vienna were so terrified of the doctor's clinic that they would sometimes give birth in the streets rather than be admitted there. Semmelweis was obsessed with finding the reason for this discrepancy. He tested numerous hypotheses, eliminating one after another. It wasn't about the position the mothers gave birth in, or the presence of a priest. The breakthrough came after a tragic accident. A colleague of his received a small cut on his finger from a scalpel during an autopsy on a woman who had died of childbed fever, and the colleague soon died from a very similar illness. Semmelweis had a flash of insight. The doctors and medical students in his clinic were routinely performing autopsies on corpses and then, without properly washing their hands, going directly to the maternity ward to deliver babies. The midwives, on the other hand, did not perform autopsies. Semmelweis hypothesized that the doctors were carrying cadaverous particles from the corpses to the mothers, causing the disease. His solution was simple and revolutionary. He instituted a strict policy of hand-washing with a chlorine solution, a powerful disinfectant, for all doctors and students entering the maternity clinic. The results were immediate, dramatic, and undeniable. The mortality rate in his clinic plummeted to below 1%, matching that of the midwives' clinic. Semmelweis had, with a simple procedure, solved the puzzle and saved countless lives. Here, however, is where the story turns dark and reveals the Semmelweis reflex. One would expect the medical establishment to celebrate this life-saving discovery. Instead, Semmelweis was met with ridicule, resistance, and outright hostility. His new evidence was rejected. His findings deeply contradicted the established beliefs and paradigms of the medical community at the time. The germ theory of disease had not yet been developed. The prevailing belief was that diseases were caused by miasmas or imbalances in the body. The idea that unseen particles on the hands of esteemed gentlemen doctors could be the cause of a fatal disease was considered absurd. Furthermore, it was a profound insult to the doctor's professional dignity. It implied that they were the cause of their patients' deaths. It was psychologically and professionally easier for them to reject Semmelweis's evidence than to accept this devastating blow to their self-concept and their worldview. Semmelweis was eventually dismissed from the hospital, his work was ignored, and he died a broken man in a mental asylum. Years later, the work of Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister would vindicate him, proving the germ theory of disease and making antiseptic procedures a cornerstone of modern medicine. The mind-fuck of the Semmelweis reflex is its chilling demonstration that evidence alone is not enough. A new truth can be staring us in the face, but if it conflicts with our deeply held beliefs, our professional identity, or our sense of how the world is supposed to work, our minds have a powerful automatic reflex to reject it. This is not necessarily a conscious, malicious act. It is a deep, psychological defense mechanism. It is the fusion of several powerful biases we have explored. Confirmation bias makes us seek out evidence that supports our existing beliefs and ignore evidence that doesn't. Cognitive dissonance makes it incredibly painful to accept new information that invalidates a core part of our worldview or self-concept. And system justification creates a powerful motivation to defend the established paradigm, the status quo of knowledge, from disruptive new ideas. The psychology mystery is the sheer power of this reflex to blind even the most intelligent and educated people. The doctors who rejected Semmelweis were not stupid, they were the leading medical experts of their day. But their expertise, their very identity as experts, had become a prison. Their established knowledge acted as a filter that made it impossible for them to see the simple, profound truth that was right in front of them. This pattern has repeated itself throughout the history of science and thought. The theories of Copernicus, of Galileo, of Darwin, of Einstein, all were met with intense, reflexive resistance from the established scientific or religious authorities of their time, because they represented a fundamental threat to the prevailing worldview. This hidden mind trap is not just a problem for 19th-century doctors or historical figures. It is a fundamental part of our own cognitive architecture. We are all susceptible to the Semmelweis reflex. When we are confronted with a new idea in politics, in science, in our personal lives, that deeply contradicts our beliefs, our first, automatic impulse is often not curiosity but resistance. We look for reasons to dismiss the new evidence, to question the source, to find flaws in the logic, rather than genuinely trying to understand it. Our own belief system has an immune system, and its job is to protect the integrity of our existing worldview, sometimes even at the expense of the truth. So, what is the antidote? It is the cultivation of intellectual humility and active open-mindedness. It is the conscious and deliberate practice of separating our ego and our identity from our beliefs. If we see our beliefs not as a part of who we are, but as hypotheses we currently hold about the world, it becomes much less threatening to consider evidence that might prove them wrong. It is the courage to ask the most difficult of questions. What evidence could convince me that I am wrong? It is the practice of engaging charitably with ideas we disagree with, of trying to understand the strongest possible version of the opposing argument. It is, in essence, the very spirit of scientific inquiry applied to our own minds. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to your own most deeply held beliefs, the ideas that form the very foundation of your understanding of the world. Acknowledge the comfort and the sense of order that these beliefs provide. Now, with a sense of gentle, non-judgmental awareness, Contemplate the Semmelweis Reflex, the automatic protective impulse to reject new evidence that threatens the stable foundation. See this not as a flaw, but as the mind's natural desire to protect its own coherence. Find deep relaxation in the liberating possibility of holding your own beliefs a little more lightly, of cultivating a mind that is open, curious, and willing to be changed by the truth, resting peacefully, with a quiet commitment to being a person who, when faced with life-saving evidence, has the courage and the humility to simply wash their hands. Automation bias. In our increasingly technological world, we are surrounded by automated systems designed to make our lives easier, more efficient, and safer. We rely on the autopilot in an airplane, the recommendations of an algorithm, the directions of our GPS, and the burgeoning intelligence of AI. These systems are often incredibly powerful and reliable. But this very reliability creates a subtle and dangerous hidden mind trap, the automation bias. This is our tendency to overtrust and become overly dependent on automated systems, to the point where we stop critically evaluating their output, ignore contradictory information from our own senses, and fail to notice when the system makes a mistake. It is a modern psychology mystery of the human-machine interface, a mind fuck that questions our own judgment in the face of technological authority. Understanding this bias is crucial for navigating our future as a species that will be ever more reliant on artificial intelligence, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin by understanding the two main forms of automation bias. The first is an error of omission. This occurs when we become so complacent and reliant on the automated system that we fail to monitor it or to take appropriate action when it fails. Think of a pilot on a long flight with the autopilot engaged. They might become so disengaged from the task of flying that they fail to notice a critical system malfunction or a change in weather conditions that the automation is not handling correctly. Their vigilance decreases because they have outsourced their attention to the machine. This is the danger of the out-of-the-loop problem. We become passive spectators rather than active operators, and when the system suddenly requires our intervention, we are not mentally prepared to take over. The second, and perhaps more insidious, form of the bias is an error of commission. This occurs when we actively follow an incorrect instruction from an automated system, even when it contradicts our own common sense or other available information. This is the source of the sometimes comical but often dangerous stories of people who follow their GPS directions blindly, driving their cars into lakes, onto railroad tracks, or down dangerously unsuitable roads. In these moments, the driver has a conflict between two sources of information: the authoritative, computer-generated voice of the GPS, and their own direct, sensory perception of the road ahead. Automation bias is the tendency to trust the machine over our own eyes. Why is this bias so powerful? It stems from several psychological factors. One is our natural tendency as cognitive misers. Thinking is effortful. Automated systems offer a powerful cognitive shortcut, allowing us to offload the difficult work of monitoring, calculating, and deciding. We are naturally inclined to trust a system that saves us mental energy. We develop a heuristic: the computer is usually right, so I will just assume it is right now. Another factor is the aura of authority and infallibility we often project onto technology. Computers are capable of performing complex calculations with a speed and accuracy that far surpasses our own, and we tend to generalize this computational superiority into a belief in their overall superiority. We can develop a kind of machine worship, an almost magical belief in the correctness of the algorithm. This can be especially strong when we don't fully understand how the system works. The opaque, black box nature of a complex AI system can make its output seem even more authoritative and unquestionable. This hidden mind trap has profound implications as we integrate more and more sophisticated AI into critical areas of our lives. In medicine, a doctor might become so reliant on an AI diagnostic tool that they fail to question its output, potentially missing a subtle diagnosis that doesn't fit the algorithm's pattern, automation bias leading to an error of omission. Or they might follow an incorrect treatment recommendation from the AI, even if it contradicts their own clinical experience, automation bias leading to an error of commission. In finance, traders might blindly follow the signals of an automated trading algorithm, leading to herd behavior and market crashes when the algorithm makes a mistake or encounters a novel situation it wasn't programmed for. In our justice system, a judge's decision on bail or sentencing could be unduly influenced by the risk assessment score provided by a biased algorithm. The mindfuck of automation bias is the profound paradox that the more reliable and effective our automated systems become, the more vulnerable we can become to their rare failures. As a system's reliability approaches 99.9%, our own vigilance and critical oversight tend to drop to near zero. We become complacent. We stop cross-checking. And it is in that 1 in 1,000 instance when the system fails that a catastrophe can occur, because the human operator has become disengaged and is unprepared to intervene. The better the technology, the greater the potential danger of our own complacency. The psychology mystery lies in finding the optimal balance between trust and vigilance. How can we reap the immense benefits of automation without surrendering our own critical judgment? The solution lies in design and training. Systems should be designed not just for efficiency, but to keep the human operator in the loop, engaged and situationally aware. An autopilot system might require the pilot to make regular check-ins. A diagnostic AI might be designed to present not just a conclusion, but also the evidence and its own level of confidence, actively inviting the doctor to challenge its reasoning. On a personal level, the antidote to automation bias is a cultivated habit of mindful skepticism. It is the conscious choice to treat our technological aids as advisors, not as commanders. When your GPS tells you to make a turn that looks wrong, the practice is to pause and trust your own senses first. When a recommendation algorithm suggests a piece of content that seems extreme or manipulative, the practice is to question its motive. It is the simple but crucial act of remembering that you, the conscious, context-aware human being, are still the ultimate authority in your own decision-making process. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the many automated systems that support your life. The thermostat that regulates your room's temperature, the device that plays this audio, the complex systems that manage the flow of electricity to your home. Acknowledge their incredible power and usefulness. Now, with a sense of calm awareness, acknowledge the subtle human tendency to overtrust these systems, to cede our own judgment to the machine. Find deep relaxation in reclaiming your own quiet authority, in the knowledge that you are the conscious observer, the ultimate arbiter of your own reality. Let go of the need to blindly follow any external authority, whether human or artificial, resting peacefully, with a mind that is both open to technological aid and firmly grounded in its own discerning awareness. The Ben Franklin Effect. Let us now turn to a subtle, counterintuitive, and surprisingly powerful hidden mind trap that governs the dynamics of our social relationships. This is the Ben Franklin Effect. The effect describes the psychological phenomenon whereby you come to like someone more after you do them a favor, especially if you had a neutral or even negative opinion of them beforehand. Our common sense intuition tells us the opposite. We do favors for people we already like. The Ben Franklin Effect reveals a backward-running current in our social psychology. Our actions can drive our attitudes, and the act of giving can generate affection. This is a profound mind-fuck of social cognition, a mystery that reveals the powerful, often unconscious, mental work we do to keep our beliefs and behaviors in harmony. Understanding this effect is a secret to building rapport and a pathway to a more nuanced understanding of human connection, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The effect gets its name from a story recounted by Benjamin Franklin in his autobiography. While serving in the Pennsylvania legislature, Franklin had to deal with a rival legislator who was a man of wealth and education, and who often opposed him. Rather than trying to win him over with flattery, Franklin employed a different, more subtle strategy. He had heard that his rival owned a very rare and curious book. Franklin wrote a polite note to the man, asking if he might do him the great favor of lending him the book for a few days. The man, likely flattered, sent it immediately. Franklin returned it about a week later with another note, expressing his gratitude. When they next met in the house, the rival, Franklin wrote, spoke to me, which he had never done before, and with great civility, and he ever after manifested a readiness to serve me on all occasions, so that we became great friends, and our friendship continued to his death. So, what psychological alchemy is at work here? The most widely accepted explanation for the Ben Franklin effect is the theory of cognitive dissonance. As we've explored, we have a deep psychological need for our attitudes and our behaviors to be consistent. When they are in conflict, we experience an uncomfortable state of dissonance, which we are motivated to resolve. In this scenario, the rival legislator is faced with two conflicting cognitions. Cognition 1, I do not particularly like or support Ben Franklin. Cognition 2, I have just performed a voluntary act of kindness for Ben Franklin. This creates dissonance. How can he resolve this conflict? He cannot easily change the behavior. He has already lent the book. It is psychologically much easier for his subconscious mind to change his attitude. His mind, seeking consistency, unconsciously reasons something like this: people do favors for people they like. I did a favor for Ben Franklin. Therefore, I must actually like Ben Franklin more than I thought. The attitude is subtly, automatically, and unconsciously shifted to align with and justify the behavior. He comes to like Franklin more as a way of making sense of his own action. The mind fuck of the Ben Franklin effect is its complete inversion of our intuitive understanding of cause and effect in relationships. We believe our feelings of liking or disliking someone cause us to act kindly or unkindly towards them. This effect shows that the causal arrow can also point in the opposite direction. Acting kindly towards someone can cause us to like them more. Our behavior is not just a reflection of our inner state, it is also a powerful force in creating our inner state. We are constantly and unconsciously inferring our own attitudes and beliefs by observing our own behavior, a process known as self-perception theory. This psychology mystery has profound implications for social interaction and relationship building. It suggests that if you want someone to like you, one of the most effective strategies is not to do them a favor, but to ask them for a small, reasonable favor. The act of them helping you can trigger a subconscious shift in their attitude towards you. It is a subtle and powerful tool of social influence, one that works not through persuasion or coercion, but by gently co-opting the other person's own internal consistency mechanisms. This also has powerful implications for our own moral and personal development. It suggests that if we want to become a more compassionate person, one of the best ways to do that is to simply act more compassionately. By consistently performing acts of kindness and helping others, we are not only benefiting them, but we are also reinforcing a self-perception of ourselves as a kind and helpful person, which can, in turn, make us more likely to act that way in the future. Our actions can create a positive feedback loop that shapes our character. The same is true for the opposite. Acting in a petty or unkind way can be justified by our minds by subtly increasing our dislike for the person we have harmed, a process that can lead to a downward spiral of negativity. The Ben Franklin effect is a testament to the power of our minds as storytellers. We are constantly striving to create a coherent narrative in which we are rational, consistent actors. When our actions don't quite fit our existing narrative, our mind often prefers to edit the narrative rather than admit to inconsistent or irrational behavior. The secret is that our actions are a powerful pen for writing that inner story. As you continue to fall asleep, gently consider the intricate dance of attitudes and actions in your own life. Recall a time you helped someone, and notice if that act of kindness subtly warmed your feeling towards them. Contemplate the profound, counterintuitive idea that we can come to like people more after we do them a favor. See this not as a form of manipulation, but as a beautiful secret of the human heart, a testament to our deep need for coherence and our mind's ability to create affection to justify kindness. Find deep relaxation in this understanding of our social nature, in the quiet, hopeful knowledge that the simple act of asking for or giving help can be a powerful seed from which friendship and connection can grow, resting peacefully within the gentle, self-persuading, and wonderfully pro-social logic of your own subconscious mind. Pro-innovation bias. In our modern, fast-paced world, we are surrounded by a powerful cultural narrative, a story of constant progress, disruption, and the relentless pursuit of the next big thing. Let us now explore a hidden mind trap that is born from this cultural climate, the pro-innovation bias. This is our subtle, often unconscious, tendency to overvalue the new and shiny, to assume that an innovation is inherently better and more useful simply because it is new, while simultaneously undervaluing the old, the traditional, and the time-tested, regardless of its actual merit. It is the psychological engine of hype cycles, the reason we are so often drawn to the latest technological gadget or the newest management fad, sometimes without a critical assessment of its true benefits or potential drawbacks. The pro-innovation bias is a mind fuck that questions our very definition of progress, revealing how our love for novelty can sometimes blind us to the wisdom and utility of the familiar. Contemplating this bias is a path to a more balanced and discerning relationship with change, inviting deep relaxation through a calm and centered perspective as you fall asleep. The pro-innovation bias is particularly strong in the context of technology and business. We are culturally conditioned to see innovation as an unalloyed good. The innovator is one of our cultural heroes. This creates a powerful heuristic or mental shortcut: new equals better. When presented with a new technology, a new app, a new social platform, or a new business strategy, our default assumption is often that it must be an improvement over the old way of doing things. This bias is heavily amplified by marketing and media, which constantly celebrate the revolutionary and the groundbreaking, creating a powerful social pressure to be an early adopter and to not be left behind. This bias causes us to focus primarily on the advantages and the potential of a new innovation, while systematically underestimating or ignoring its disadvantages, its limitations, and its potential for unintended negative consequences. Think of the initial, breathless enthusiasm for many new technologies. Social media was hailed as a revolutionary tool for global connection and democratic expression, and its potential for creating echo chambers, spreading misinformation, and damaging mental health was largely overlooked in the initial wave of adoption. The pro-innovation bias creates a kind of novelty bubble, where a critical and balanced assessment can be very difficult. At the same time as we overvalue the new, we often simultaneously and unfairly undervalue the old. We can fall into a form of chronological snobbery, the assumption that the ideas, technologies, or practices of the past are inherently inferior simply because they are old. We might dismiss the wisdom of an ancient philosophical tradition in favor of the latest pop psychology fad. We might abandon a simple, reliable, and time-tested tool or process in favor of a new, complex, and often unproven technological solution that creates more problems than it solves. The old way is seen as boring, inefficient, and outdated, even if it is, in fact, highly effective, resilient, and better suited to the context. The psychology mystery of the pro-innovation bias lies in its deep roots. It is not just a product of modern marketing. It may be connected to a fundamental aspect of our psychology: neophilia, the attraction to novelty. Our brains are wired to pay attention to what is new and different in our environment. In our evolutionary past, a novel stimulus could signal a new opportunity, a new food source, or a new threat, a new predator. So being attuned to novelty was a crucial survival skill. The release of dopamine in our brain's reward centers is associated not just with pleasure, but with the anticipation of potential reward, and novelty is a powerful trigger for this system. The pro-innovation bias can be seen as this ancient novelty-seeking drive being supercharged in a modern world of constant, technologically driven change. The mindfuck of this bias is the realization that our very idea of progress might be an illusion, or at least not a simple linear path forward. We assume that a new technology or a new idea is a step up, but it is often just a step sideways, a trade-off. The new solution might solve one problem while creating a host of new, unforeseen ones. The automobile was an incredible innovation that brought immense freedom, but it also brought traffic jams, pollution, and a sedentary lifestyle. The pro-innovation bias makes us focus on the exciting upside of freedom while downplaying the slow, creeping downside of the consequences. It questions our ability to make wise, long-term decisions in the face of our powerful attraction to the new. So, what is the antidote to this hidden mind trap? It is not to become a Luddite, to reject all new things and cling fearfully to the past. The antidote is to cultivate a more balanced, critical, and discerning perspective. It is the practice of consciously separating the novelty of an idea from its actual merit. When confronted with a new innovation, we can learn to pause the initial excitement and ask a set of more sober questions. What is the actual problem this is trying to solve? How well does it solve it compared to the existing solutions? What are the potential hidden costs, the unintended consequences, the long-term effects? And conversely, when we are about to discard an old way of doing things, we can ask, what is the deep, time-tested wisdom that this old method contains? What are the subtle benefits that we might be taking for granted and are about to lose? This requires a form of thinking that values not just innovation, but also maintenance, sustainability, and resilience. It is the wisdom to know when to adopt the new and when to preserve the old. It is the understanding that progress is not always about forward motion. Sometimes it is about rediscovering the value in what we have already. As you continue to fall asleep, allow your mind to gently hold this tension between the old and the new. Acknowledge the exciting, dopaminergic pull of the novel, the innovative, the next big thing. Feel the deep, often unconscious, assumption that new is always better. Now, with a sense of calm balance, also bring to mind the quiet, steady, and reliable wisdom of the old. The time-tested, the familiar, the things that have endured for a reason. Find deep relaxation in a more balanced perspective. Let go of the frantic need to always be at the cutting edge, and instead, cultivate a quiet, discerning wisdom, the ability to judge ideas and tools based on their true merit, not just their age, resting peacefully in a calm and timeless space, free from the seductive and often deceptive tyranny of the new. The not invented here bias. We have explored the many hidden mind traps that shape our individual thoughts and social connections. Let us now turn to a powerful and pervasive bias that operates at the boundary between groups, a subtle form of cognitive tribalism that can stifle innovation, hinder progress, and keep us locked in our own familiar ways of thinking. We will delve into the not invented here bias. This is our unconscious, automatic tendency to devalue or reject ideas, solutions, or products simply because they originate from an external source, an outgroup, rather than from within our own group, our company, or our own mind. It is the psychological equivalent of an immune system for our collective ego, a mechanism that reflexively attacks foreign ideas, regardless of their intrinsic merit. The not invented here bias is a profound psychology mystery of group cognition, a mindfuck that questions our commitment to rationality and reveals how our loyalty to us can make us blind to the wisdom of them. Understanding this trap is crucial for fostering genuine creativity and collaboration, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin by understanding the psychological roots of this bias. The not invented here, NIH, bias is a direct and powerful manifestation of the us versus them psychology that we have explored in other contexts. It is a fusion of several deep-seated cognitive and social forces. The first of these is in-group favoritism, a concept from social identity theory. As we've seen, we are motivated to maintain a positive view of our own group. One way to do this is to believe that our group, our team, our company, our nation, is more competent, more creative, and more intelligent than rival groups. The NIH bias is the direct result of this. We automatically overvalue the ideas and products created by us, and by the same token, we automatically devalue those that come from them. An idea from within the group feels familiar, trustworthy, and is seen as a testament to our collective brilliance. The exact same idea, if it originates from an outside source or a competitor, is often met with suspicion, skepticism, and a powerful, if unconscious, desire to find flaws in it. Another key factor is our deep psychological need for ownership and autonomy. We value our own creations and ideas more highly, a phenomenon related to the IKEA effect and effort justification. An idea that is invented here feels like our idea. We are invested in it, we understand its history, and its success becomes our success. An idea from the outside can feel like a threat to this sense of ownership and competence. To accept an external solution can feel like an admission that we were not smart enough or creative enough to come up with it ourselves. This can be a significant blow to the individual or collective ego, especially in a competitive environment. The NIH bias is a defense mechanism that protects our self-esteem and our sense of group superiority. Corporate and organizational culture can also create and reinforce this bias. A culture that heavily rewards internal innovation but implicitly punishes copying or adopting external ideas can foster a powerful NIH mindset. Teams can become insular and territorial, creating silos that prevent the free flow of information. The phrase, "if it were a good idea, we would have thought of it already," becomes the unspoken mantra, a powerful and arrogant defense against the not invented here solution. The mindfuck of the not invented here bias is its profound irrationality. It is a bias that leads a group to make objectively worse decisions, to reject a superior external solution in favor of an inferior internal one, or to waste immense resources reinventing the wheel rather than simply adopting a perfectly good, existing solution. It is a form of collective self-sabotage, where the psychological need to protect the group's ego and maintain its sense of superiority overrides the rational goal of finding the best possible solution. It questions our very ability to be objective and pragmatic when our group identity is on the line. The psychology mystery is how this bias can be so powerful and so invisible to those in its grip. The people rejecting the external idea rarely, if ever, say, "We are rejecting this because it's not ours." Instead, they engage in sophisticated rationalization. They will find countless logical reasons why the external idea is flawed, why it won't work here, why it's not a good fit for our culture, or why their own internally developed solution is subtly better. The bias operates not by openly rejecting the foreign, but by subtly shifting the criteria for evaluation, creating a powerful home field advantage for internal ideas. The process feels perfectly rational and objective to those inside the group, but to an outside observer, the bias is often glaringly obvious. The consequences of the NIH bias can be severe. In business, it can lead to a failure to innovate as companies become so focused on their own internal R&D that they miss or dismiss disruptive technologies emerging from the outside. The famous story of Kodak, which invented the first digital camera but was slow to embrace the technology because it threatened their dominant film business, a form of NIH, is a classic cautionary tale. In science, it can lead to different labs or different theoretical camps being overly critical of each other's work and failing to see the potential for synthesis and collaboration. In our personal lives, it can make us resistant to good advice from friends or family, simply because the solution was not invented here, in our own mind. So, what is the antidote to this insular and limiting mind trap? The most powerful solution is the conscious cultivation of an open and externally focused mindset. Leaders of an organization can actively and explicitly reward not just internal innovation, but also the smart adoption and integration of external ideas. They can create a culture where proudly found elsewhere is just as celebrated as proudly invented here. On an individual level, it requires a dose of intellectual humility. It is the willingness to acknowledge that good ideas can come from anywhere, and that your own group does not have a monopoly on intelligence or creativity. It involves the practice of charitable interpretation. When confronted with an idea from an outgroup, the goal should be to first find the strongest possible version of that idea, to understand its merits, before launching into a critique. It also involves a degree of self-awareness, the ability to pause and ask, am I rejecting this idea because it is genuinely flawed or because it came from them and not from us? As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the boundaries of your own groups, your team at work, your circle of friends, your intellectual tribe. Acknowledge the natural human tendency to favor the ideas that are born within these familiar circles, to feel a sense of pride in our solutions and a subtle skepticism towards theirs. See this not invented here bias not as a malicious fault, but as a deep, instinctual expression of group loyalty, a secret of the tribal mind. Find deep relaxation in the liberating act of consciously opening the gates, of being willing to welcome good ideas regardless of their origin. Recognize that the ultimate goal is not for your group to be right, but to find the right solution, wherever it may be, resting peacefully with a mind that is not a fortified castle, but an open and welcoming harbor for the best ideas, no matter where they come from. The empathy gap. Let us now explore a profound and pervasive hidden mind trap that creates a deep chasm in our understanding, not only of others but of ourselves. We will delve into the empathy gap. This is our powerful and often unconscious inability to accurately appreciate the power of visceral drives and emotional states when we are not currently experiencing them. When we are in a cold, calm, and rational state, we consistently underestimate the influence that hot states, like pain, hunger, anger, fear, or craving, will have on our own behavior and the behavior of others. The empathy gap is a fundamental failure of our imagination, a psychology mystery that explains why our best intentions so often crumble in the face of temptation, and why we can be so profoundly unempathetic to the struggles of others who are in a different emotional state. This mindfuck questions our very ability to know ourselves and to connect authentically with others, inviting deep relaxation through a more compassionate and realistic understanding of the power of feelings as you fall asleep. The empathy gap is a broader concept that encompasses the restraint bias we explored earlier, but it extends to all visceral drives and emotional states, and crucially to our perception of other people. Let's first re-examine its impact on our own self-understanding. When you are feeling calm and rational, a cold state, you might make a firm resolution to handle a future stressful situation, like a difficult conversation with a loved one, with perfect patience and understanding. You are making a plan from your current cool-headed perspective, and in this state it feels entirely achievable. You cannot, at that moment, truly feel or appreciate the overwhelming power of the hot state of anger or hurt that you will experience during the actual confrontation. When that moment arrives, your body is flooded with stress hormones, your prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason, becomes less active, and your behavior is driven by the more primitive, emotional parts of your brain. Your calm, rational plan evaporates, and you find yourself saying and doing things that your cold self would never have endorsed. Afterwards, as you cool down, you might be filled with regret, asking, why did I act that way? The empathy gap is the answer. Your cold self simply could not accurately predict or prepare for the immense power of your hot self. You have an empathy gap with your own future self. This same gap plagues our understanding of others, and it is a profound barrier to genuine compassion. When we are feeling comfortable, secure, and well-fed, it is incredibly difficult to truly understand the all-consuming, desperate reality of someone who is in a state of chronic pain, extreme poverty, or the grip of a powerful addiction. We can understand it intellectually, but we cannot feel it. Our cold state of comfort creates a chasm between us and their hot state of suffering. This can lead to a profound lack of empathy and to cruel, simplistic judgments. We might look at someone struggling with addiction and think, why don't they just stop? It's a matter of willpower. We are judging their hot state of intense, neurologically driven craving from our own cold state of non-craving, and we are completely failing to appreciate the phenomenal power of the state they are in. The same applies to our judgments of people in poverty. Why don't they just work harder? Or those suffering from depression. Why don't they just cheer up? We are underestimating the power of their internal state because we are not in it. The mind fuck of the empathy gap is its revelation that our own emotional state is a powerful, distorting lens that colors our perception of everyone, including ourselves. It questions our very ability to be objective, compassionate judges. It suggests that empathy is not just a stable character trait, but a state-dependent ability. It is easy to be empathetic to someone who is feeling the same way we are, but it is incredibly difficult to bridge the gap to a different emotional reality. The mystery is the sheer robustness of this bias. Even when we know about it, the hot-cold gap is incredibly difficult to cross with pure imagination. The empathy gap has profound implications for our social reality. It is a major source of conflict in relationships, where one partner in a calm state can fail to appreciate the intense emotional distress of the other. It is a fundamental barrier in medicine, where a healthy doctor can struggle to truly grasp the subjective reality of a patient's chronic pain. It is a massive problem in policymaking, where comfortable, well-off policymakers can create laws that fail to address the desperate, visceral realities of their poorest citizens. The gap is everywhere, a silent and powerful force for misunderstanding and lack of compassion. So, what can we do to bridge this gap? There is no easy solution as the bias is so fundamental. However, the first and most powerful step is awareness and humility. By simply knowing that the empathy gap exists, we can learn to be more skeptical of our own judgments when we are in a cold state evaluating someone in a hot state. We can learn to say to ourselves, I cannot truly feel what they are feeling right now, so I must be cautious in my judgment. Their reality is likely far more intense and compelling than I can currently imagine. Another key is to draw on memory and experience. If you have ever been in a similar hot state in the past, a state of intense hunger, pain, or fear, you can consciously try to recall the memory of that feeling, to bring a ghost of that hot state into your present cold state. This can help to make your judgment more empathetic and realistic. This is why personal experience with suffering can be such a powerful catalyst for compassion. For society, the most powerful tools are storytelling and art. A well-written novel, a powerful film, or a moving piece of testimony can transport us, imaginatively and emotionally, into the subjective reality of another person. It is a form of simulated experience that allows us, for a moment, to bridge the empathy gap and to feel what it is like to be in another's shoes. These are technologies of empathy, and they are essential for a compassionate society. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to your own current emotional and physical state. Are you in a hot state or a cool state? Acknowledge how this state is coloring your perception of the world and your own thoughts right now. Contemplate the profound difficulty of truly imagining a state you are not in. The chasm between hunger and satiety, between pain and comfort, between fear and calm. This is the empathy gap. See it not as a personal failing but as a fundamental feature of the human mind, a secret of our embodied consciousness. Find deep relaxation in the humble acceptance of this limit, and in the gentle, conscious intention to be more compassionate, more cautious in your judgments of others, and more strategic in managing yourself, resting peacefully, with a deeper and more realistic understanding of the powerful and often invisible influence of our inner states. The Four Effect. Let us now explore a hidden mind trap that reveals our deep and often unconscious yearning to be seen, understood, and to find meaning in the world around us. We will delve into the Four Effect, more popularly known as the Barnum Effect, after the famous showman P.T. Barnum's apocryphal saying, "There's a sucker born every minute." This is the psychological phenomenon that occurs when individuals give high accuracy ratings to personality descriptions that they believe are specifically tailored for them, but which are in fact vague, general, and could apply to almost anyone. It is the secret behind the enduring appeal of horoscopes, fortune-telling, and many pop psychology personality tests. The Forer effect is a profound psychology mystery, a mind fuck that questions our ability to distinguish between genuine insight and flattering generality. It reveals how our own minds are complicit in creating an illusion of being uniquely understood, a secret of the subconscious that highlights our hunger for meaning and self-knowledge. Contemplating this bias can be a source of profound deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The classic demonstration of the Forer effect was an experiment conducted by psychologist Bertram R. Forer in 1948. He gave his students a personality test. A week later, he gave each student what he claimed was a unique, individualized personality analysis based on their test results, and asked them to rate its accuracy on a scale of 0 to 5. The students were amazed by the insightfulness of their results, giving them an average accuracy rating of 4.26 out of 5. They felt the descriptions captured their personalities perfectly. Then came the reveal. Forer had given every single student the exact same personality sketch, a collection of vague and generalized statements that he had culled from various horoscopes. The statements included phrases like, "You have a great need for other people to like and admire you. You have a tendency to be critical of yourself. At times you are extroverted, affable, sociable, while at other times you are introverted, wary, reserved. You have a great deal of unused capacity which you have not turned to your advantage." These are classic Barnum statements. They feel personal and specific, but they are, in fact, almost universally true. Who doesn't have a need to be liked? Who isn't sometimes critical of themselves? Who isn't a mix of introverted and extroverted tendencies? The statements are so general that almost anyone can find evidence for them in their own lives and experiences. So, why are we so susceptible to this effect? The Forer effect is a powerful cocktail of several different cognitive biases and psychological needs. The first and most important ingredient is our deep human desire for self-understanding and validation. We are all, in a sense, a mystery to ourselves, and we are hungry for insights that can help us to make sense of our own complex and often contradictory nature. When we are presented with a personality analysis, we are not a neutral, skeptical observer. We are an eager participant, actively searching for connections and confirmations. This leads directly to confirmation bias. When we read a vague statement like, "You have a tendency to be critical of yourself," our minds immediately and automatically begin to scan our vast library of memories for instances that confirm this statement. We instantly recall the time we were hard on ourselves after a failure and we think, "Yes, that is so true." We do not, in that moment, perform an equally rigorous search for all the times we were proud of ourselves or let ourselves off the hook. We seek to confirm, not to falsify. The vagueness of the statement is its power. It provides a large and fertile ground for our confirmation bias to find a match. The desirability of the traits mentioned also plays a key role. Most Barnum statements are overwhelmingly positive or, at least, flatteringly complex. They tell us we have unused capacity, that we are independent-minded, that we can be both sociable and reserved. They paint a picture of a complex, interesting, and potential-filled individual. It is easy and pleasant to agree with such a flattering description. We are motivated to believe it is true because it enhances our self-esteem. The perceived authority of the source is another crucial factor. In Forer's experiment, the students received their analysis from their psychology professor, a figure of authority and expertise. The same statements, if presented by a random stranger, might have been met with more skepticism. When we believe the analysis is coming from a trusted or scientific source, we lower our critical guard and become more receptive to its claims. The mind fuck of the Forer effect is the profound revelation of how easily we can be fooled into feeling deeply and uniquely understood by pure, generic flattery. It questions our very ability to recognize genuine insight from clever artifice. It suggests that much of the meaning we find in systems like astrology or pop psychology is not an inherent property of the system itself, but is a product of our own mind's powerful, creative, and meaning-seeking activity. We are the ones who do the work. The vague statements are just a canvas upon which we project our own self-concept. The fortune teller is not reading our future. They are skillfully reading our deep human need to be seen, and feeding it back to us in a way that feels personal and profound. The psychology mystery lies in the power and automaticity of this self-deception. Even when we are made aware of the Forer effect, we can still fall for it. The desire to feel known, to find patterns, and to believe in a narrative that makes sense of our own complex personality is incredibly strong. It is a testament to the fact that our minds are not just logic machines, but are also meaning-making machines. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to your own sense of self, the complex, multifaceted, and sometimes contradictory person that you are. Acknowledge the deep human need to be understood, to have this complexity seen and validated. Now, with a sense of gentle, discerning awareness, contemplate the Forer effect. The subtle trap of vague general statements that seem to describe you perfectly. See this not with cynicism, but with a quiet, wise understanding of your own mind's hunger for meaning. Find deep relaxation in this self-awareness, in the knowledge that true self-understanding comes not from external labels or generalized descriptions, but from the quiet, honest, and ongoing work of self-reflection, resting peacefully, secure in the knowledge of your own unique, complex, and beautifully specific self, a self that is far too rich to be captured by any simple formula. The illusion of asymmetric insight. For our final exploration of the mind's hidden traps tonight, let us turn to a subtle, pervasive, and deeply ironic bias that governs our perception of social knowledge. We will explore the illusion of asymmetric insight. This is our quiet, often unstated, but deeply held belief that we understand other people, their motivations, their character, their inner worlds, better than they understand us. We feel that our own self is complex, nuanced, and often hidden, while the selves of others are more transparent, more knowable, more easily deciphered. This creates an asymmetry in our perceived social insight. Our insight into them is deep and penetrating, while their insight into us is shallow and often mistaken. This hidden mind trap is a profound form of egocentric bias, a mindfuck that questions the very foundation of our social judgments. It is a psychology mystery that helps to explain why we so often feel misunderstood, why we are so confident in our judgments of others, and why interpersonal and intergroup conflicts can be so difficult to resolve. Contemplating this illusion is a final, powerful step towards a more humble, more compassionate, and more realistic understanding of our social existence, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin by unpacking the two sides of this illusion. The first side is the belief in our superior understanding of others. When we observe another person, we tend to feel like we are seeing their true self, that we can see through their public persona to the hidden motivations and character traits that are really driving them. We feel that we can detect their biases, their self-deceptions, and their hidden agendas with a special clarity. We see their behavior and we feel confident in our ability to make deep, dispositional attributions about who they are. We might think, I know what he's really all about, or, I can see her true motives. The second side of the illusion is the corresponding belief that others do not understand us nearly as well. We experience our own selves from the inside, a world of immense complexity, of shifting thoughts, of contradictory feelings, of private intentions and hidden histories. We know that our outward behavior is often just a small, and sometimes misleading, fraction of our inner reality. We feel that others see only our surface, our persona, and that they consistently misunderstand our true character, our deeper motivations. We feel that their judgments of us are simplistic, stereotyped, and often just plain wrong. They don't really know me, is the common and often deeply felt refrain. This creates the asymmetry, I know you better than you know me, and I know myself better than you know me. And most remarkably, I even believe that I know you better than you know yourself. The illusion can extend to the belief that we can see the unconscious motivations and self-deceptions in others that they themselves are blind to, while remaining largely unaware of our own. What are the psychological roots of this powerful illusion? The primary driver is a profound information asymmetry. We have access to a vast, rich, and continuous stream of information about our own inner lives, our every thought, feeling, memory, and intention. This is our private, internal world. When we look at another person, we have access only to a very limited, external, and often highly curated stream of information. Their words, their actions, their expressions. We mistake this difference in the amount of information for a difference in the quality of our insight. Because we have so much data about ourselves, we see ourselves as complex and nuanced. Because we have so little data about others, we tend to see them in simpler, more schematic terms. This is amplified by the actor-observer bias, which we have touched upon. When explaining our own behavior, we are acutely aware of the situational factors that influence us. I was late because the traffic was terrible. When explaining others' behavior, we tend to ignore the situational factors, which are often invisible to us, and attribute their actions to their fundamental character or disposition. They were late because they are an irresponsible person. This leads us to believe that their behavior is a simple reflection of their inner self, while our own behavior is a complex response to external circumstances. It makes them seem simpler and more predictable than we are. The mind fuck of the illusion of asymmetric insight is its profound and tragic irony. The bias is universal. This means that while you are sitting there, feeling that you understand the people around you better than they understand you, they are sitting there, feeling the exact same way about you. Both sides of a disagreement often feel that they have a clear, objective view of the other's biases, while failing to recognize their own. This is a recipe for mutual misunderstanding and a profound sense of being perpetually misunderstood. It is a primary engine of conflict, from marital disputes to international relations. Each side feels it has the privileged, objective insight, and that the other side is the one that is biased or irrational. The psychology mystery lies in the sheer, unshakable confidence that accompanies this illusion. It is not just a mild preference, it feels like a self-evident truth. The feeling that we see through others is incredibly compelling. This is because our brain's social cognition system is a powerful meaning-making machine. It takes the sparse data of another person's behavior and, using our own experiences and stereotypes as a top-down model, it instantly and automatically generates a coherent and seemingly complete narrative about their character and motivations. This narrative feels like a direct perception, not an inference. It is another example of the illusion of transparency, but this time it's a one-way transparency. We believe we can see into them, but that they cannot see into us. The consequences of this hidden mind trap are significant. It can lead to a profound sense of alienation and loneliness, the feeling that no one truly understands me. It can breed arrogance and a condescending attitude towards others, as we feel we have them all figured out. It is a powerful barrier to genuine dialogue and mutual understanding in conflicts. If you believe you already understand the other person's real, and likely negative, motivations, you have no incentive to listen to what they are actually saying. You will interpret their words through the biased lens of your supposed deeper insight. The antidote to the illusion of asymmetric insight is, once again, the cultivation of deep intellectual humility. It is the courageous act of admitting that your knowledge of others is and always will be incomplete and inferential. It is the practice of recognizing that the inner world of another person is just as complex, nuanced, and hidden as your own. It requires a conscious shift from a position of knowing to a position of curiosity. Instead of assuming you know why someone did what they did, you can ask them. Instead of assuming you know what they believe, you can listen. This also requires a degree of compassionate realism about how well we are known. It means accepting that, for the most part, others will not fully understand our inner world, not because they are malicious or uncaring, but because the task is impossible. This realization can free us from the constant and often disappointing need to be perfectly understood. It encourages us to take responsibility for communicating our inner states more clearly, rather than assuming they are obvious. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to your own sense of your inner world, its immense complexity, its hidden depths, its secret histories. Acknowledge that this world is, in its fullness, known only to you. Now, with a sense of profound humility, extend that same acknowledgement to every other person. Recognize that behind their eyes, too, lies an equally complex, equally hidden, and equally mysterious inner universe that you can never fully enter. Let go of the illusion that you have a special, privileged insight into their souls. Find deep relaxation in the release from this subtle arrogance, in the quiet, compassionate acceptance of our mutual opacity, resting peacefully, not as a master psychologist who has figured everyone out, but as one mysterious being, living amongst other mysterious beings, in a shared and beautiful dance of imperfect understanding.